Help my mom! They beat her! The child's scream tore through the concrete silence of the parking garage, a desperate cry that would shatter two lives and rebuild them into something unbreakable. In 10 seconds, a former Navy SEAL would face the woman who destroyed his career. In 10 days, they'd uncover a conspiracy worth killing for. In 10 months, they'd prove that the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun. It's the truth. This is the story of Jack Miller and Sophia Grant, two broken souls who learned that sometimes saving someone else is the only way to save yourself. Stay until the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the underground parking garage of Grant Tech headquarters flickered with a nervous rhythm, casting dancing shadows across oil-stained concrete. It was 8:47 p.m. on a Thursday in September, and the building above hummed with the quiet ambition of a company that never truly slept. Executive assistants finished reports. Engineers debugged code. Security guards made their rounds. Life continued in its ordinary, predictable patterns, until it didn't. "Help! Somebody help us!" The voice was small, young, terrified, the kind of sound that bypasses rational thought and strikes directly at the human instinct to protect. "Help my mom! They beat my mom!" Jack Miller heard the scream from 50 feet away, near the service elevator where he'd been replacing a faulty hydraulic pump. His hands stilled on the wrench he'd been turning. For most people, the natural response would be to look around first, assess the situation, maybe call security. For Jack, there was no hesitation. His toolbox hit the concrete floor with a metallic crash that echoed through the garage like a starter pistol. He moved. Years of training overrode conscious thought. His body remembered what his mind sometimes tried to forget. The weight of combat gear, the sand of distant deserts, the adrenaline-sharp focus of life or death decisions made in fractions of seconds. Jack Miller was 42 years old, 6'2", with the lean, coiled strength of someone who maintained discipline long after leaving the service. His hands were calloused from honest work, his hair flecked with premature gray, his face marked with the kind of lines that came from squinting into hostile suns and harder truths. He'd been a Navy SEAL for 12 years before a roadside bomb in Afghanistan ended his military career and began his nightmare. Now he was a mechanic in the building's maintenance department, invisible to the executives who rushed past him to their important meetings, their world-changing deals, their lives that mattered more than his. But tonight, none of that mattered. Jack rounded the corner between two rows of parked cars and took in the scene with tactical precision. Three men, all roughly 6 feet tall, dressed in dark clothing that wasn't quite professional but wasn't street casual either. Hired muscle, he assessed immediately. The kind of men who got paid to intimidate, to hurt, to send messages written in bruises and fear. They surrounded a woman who was on her knees, blood streaming from a cut above her left eye. One man gripped her arm, twisting it at an angle that made Jack's jaw clench. Another stood with his fist raised, preparing for another blow. The third man was turning toward the source of the crying. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, with dark curls and tear-streaked cheeks, who stood frozen 10 feet away, one hand reaching toward her mother, the other pressed against her mouth, as if she could somehow take back the scream that had escaped. Jack's eyes flicked to the woman's face, and something cold dropped through his chest. Sophia Grant. Even beaten and bleeding, even on her knees in a parking garage, she was unmistakable. Sophia Grant, founder and CEO of Grant Tech, one of the fastest-growing technology companies in the nation. Sophia Grant, whose face graced the covers of business magazines with headlines like "The Woman Rebuilding American Innovation" and "From Startup to Empire, the Sophia Grant Story." Sophia Grant, who had fired him 2 years ago. The recognition took a half second, maybe less, then training took over. "Step away from her, now." Jack's voice was quiet, conversational almost, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. He'd learned in the SEALs that the most dangerous men rarely shouted. The three men turned. The one holding Sophia's arm sneered, revealing a gold front tooth. "This doesn't concern you, old man. Keep walking unless you want what she's getting." Jack didn't respond with words. He simply moved forward, his gait unhurried but purposeful, closing the distance between them with the inevitability of a tide. "I said step away." Still quiet. still calm. Goldtooth released Sophia and took a step toward Jack, cracking his knuckles. You got a hearing problem? I'll fix that for... He never finished the sentence. Jack's right hand shot out, seized Goldtooth's wrist, and twisted with surgical precision. The snap of breaking bone echoed through the garage. Before Goldtooth could even process the pain, Jack drove his knee into the man's solar plexus, folding him like a puppet with cut strings. 2 seconds. 1, down. The second man, taller and heavier than the first, rushed forward with a wild haymaker. Jack ducked under it, stepped inside the man's reach, and delivered 3 rapid strikes, one to the liver, one to the floating ribs, one to the side of the knee. The man crashed into a parked BMW, setting off its alarm in a cacophony of sound that seemed to come from another world. 4 seconds. 2 down. The third man was smarter or more cowardly. He pulled a knife, a wicked-looking blade that caught the fluorescent light. I'll gut you, old man. Jack moved before the threat was finished. He sidestepped the knife thrust, caught the man's wrist, and used his own momentum to drive him face first into a concrete support pillar. The knife clattered across the floor. The man slid down the pillar, leaving a smear of blood on the concrete. 10 seconds. All 3 down. Jack stood over them, breathing steady, his hands relaxed at his sides. The entire confrontation had lasted less time than it took to reheat coffee in a microwave. He looked at the men, assessing threats. Goldtooth was writhing, clutching his wrist. The heavy one was gasping for breath. The knife wielder was unconscious or close to it. None of them would be getting up anytime soon. Jack turned to the woman on the ground. Sophia Grant was staring at him with wide eyes, her hand pressed against the cut above her eyebrow. Blood seeped through her fingers, but Jack could tell immediately that the wound wasn't life-threatening. Head wounds bled dramatically, but this one was shallow. Emma, Sophia gasped, turning toward her daughter. Emma, sweetie. The little girl ran to her mother, throwing her arms around her neck with the fierce desperation of a child who'd been certain she was about to become an orphan. Sophia held her with her free arm, whispering words of comfort, even as her own body shook with shock. Jack knelt beside them, his movements slow and deliberate, non-threatening. I need to look at that cut, ma'am. The bleeding needs to stop. Sophia turned to him, and this time her eyes focused, truly seeing him for the first time. He watched recognition dawn across her face, confusion first, then shock, then something that might have been shame or fear, or both. You, she whispered. Yeah, Jack said quietly. Me. For a moment, neither of them moved. The past hung between them like a physical barrier, 2 years of anger and injustice and paths that were never supposed to cross again. But then Emma whimpered, and Sophia's hand trembled against her wound, and Jack remembered something more important than grudges. He'd been a medic in his SEAL team. Combat medicine was branded into his muscle memory the same way tactical movement was. He pulled off his gray work shirt, leaving him in a white undershirt, and tore the fabric into strips with hands that didn't shake. I'm going to put pressure on this, he said, his voice shifting into the calm, authoritative tone he'd used countless times in field hospitals and transport choppers. It's going to hurt, but I need you to hold still. Sophia nodded, pulling her hand away. The cut was about 2 inches long, just above her left eyebrow, probably from a ring on someone's fist. Jack pressed the folded cloth against it, applying firm pressure. Sophia flinched but didn't pull away. Emma, Jack said, making eye contact with the terrified child. Your mom is going to be okay. This looks worse than it is. Head cuts bleed a lot, but this one isn't deep. She's going to be fine. Emma nodded, her eyes huge in her pale face. She was clutching her mother's hand so tightly her knuckles were white. What's your favorite color? Jack asked the girl, still maintaining pressure on Sophia's wound. What? Emma's voice was small, confused. Your favorite color, I need to know. Purple, Emma whispered. Purple's a great color. You know what? My daughter's favorite color is purple too. Her name's Lena. She's 8. How old are you? 7. Emma's breathing was starting to slow, the distraction working. 7's a good age. Lena says 7 was her best year because that's when she learned to ride a bike. Can you ride a bike? Yes. A tiny bit of pride crept into Emma's voice. That's excellent. That means you're brave. And brave girls help their moms, right? Emma nodded. Good. I need you to hold this flashlight. Jack pulled a small LED flashlight from his belt and handed it to Emma. Point it right here at your mom's forehead. Can you do that? Emma took the flashlight with trembling hands and aimed the beam where Jack indicated. The simple task gave her something to focus on besides fear. Jack lifted the cloth slightly, checking the wound. The bleeding had slowed to a seep. You need stitches, he told Sophia, but the bleeding's under control. We need to call... No police. Sophia's voice was sharp, urgent. No hospitals. Not yet. Jack's eyes narrowed. Ma'am, you were just assaulted. You need medical attention, and I know what I need, Sophia interrupted, her CEO voice emerging despite the blood and fear. And I know what calling the police right now would mean. Please, just help me get to my car. I have a private physician I can call. Jack studied her face, reading the desperation there, the calculation, the fear that ran deeper than physical injury. Something about this attack wasn't random. Sophia Grant knew something, suspected something, that made official channels dangerous. Against his better judgment, Jack nodded. All right, but if you pass out or show signs of concussion, that decision gets overridden. Understood? Understood. Jack helped Sophia to her feet, steadying her when she swayed. She was shorter than he'd expected, maybe 5'6", and despite her reputation as a titan of industry, she seemed almost fragile in this moment. Almost, but not quite. There was steel in the way she straightened her spine, in the way she kept one arm around Emma even as she fought dizziness. Behind them, Goldtooth was trying to crawl toward the exit. Jack put his boot on the man's shoulder, not hard enough to cause damage, but firm enough to make a point. If I see any of you near her again, Jack said quietly, I won't stop at broken bones. Are we clear? Goldtooth nodded frantically. Jack turned back to Sophia. Which car? She pointed to a silver Tesla Model S 3 spaces away. Jack helped her walk to it. Emma pressed against her mother's side like a small, frightened shadow. When they reached the car, Sophia fumbled for her keys with shaking hands. I'll drive, Jack said. It wasn't a question. For a moment he thought she might argue. Sophia Grant was famous for her control, her refusal to delegate important matters, her hands-on leadership style. But then she looked at her blood-covered hands, at her terrified daughter, and nodded. Jack settled Sophia in the passenger seat, then lifted Emma into the back, making sure her seatbelt was secure. The girl was quiet now, shock setting in properly. Jack had seen it before. The way trauma could make a child go silent, retreating into themselves as the brain tried to process what had happened. He slid into the driver's seat. The Tesla's interior was pristine, all smooth leather and touchscreen displays. It smelled like expensive perfume and new car leather. Jack's maintenance uniform left grease stains on the seat, but he couldn't worry about that now. Where am I going? He asked. Sophia gave him an address in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, then immediately pulled out her phone and dialed a number with shaking fingers. Jack heard her speak in clipped, urgent tones. Dr. Matthews, it's Sophia. I need you at my house in 20 minutes. Don't ask questions. Just come. And bring your kit. She hung up and leaned her head back against the headrest, eyes closed, still pressing Jack's makeshift bandage to her forehead. They drove in silence for several blocks, the city sliding past the windows in a blur of lights and late evening traffic. In the back seat, Emma had gone completely quiet, staring at nothing. Finally, Sophia spoke. Why did you help me? Jack kept his eyes on the road. What kind of question is that? A legitimate one. After what happened, after what I did, you had every reason to walk away, to let them finish what they started. That's not who I am, Jack said quietly. No, Sophia agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. It isn't. It never was. Another silence stretched between them, heavy with history. Finally, Jack broke it. Who were they? I don't know their names. But you know who sent them. It wasn't a question. Sophia opened her eyes, turning to look at him. In the passing streetlights, her face was a study in exhaustion and calculation. I have suspicions. Suspicions strong enough to refuse police protection? Suspicions that would be impossible to prove and dangerous to voice publicly. She paused. There are things happening at Grant Tech. Things I've been investigating quietly. Tonight was a message. Jack's hands tightened on the steering wheel. What kind of things? Sophia glanced back at Emma, checking if her daughter was listening. The girl's eyes were closed now, exhaustion or shock pulling her toward sleep. Sophia turned back to Jack, lowering her voice further. Safety violations, covered up, for months, maybe longer. Equipment that should have been flagged and replaced. Inspections that were passed despite obvious failures. I started asking questions 3 weeks ago. Tonight, I got my answer about whether I was onto something real. Jack processed this information. You think someone inside your own company ordered this? I think someone with a lot to lose decided I needed to be frightened into silence. They were wrong. Despite everything, Jack felt a flicker of respect. Beaten, bleeding, terrified for her daughter, and Sophia Grant's first response was defiance. Maybe she'd changed in 2 years, or maybe this was who she'd always been beneath the corporate armor. Why not go to the board? Jack asked. Blow the whistle properly. Because I don't know how deep this goes. I don't know who's compromised. Until I do, the only people I can trust are the ones who have nothing to gain from my silence. She looked at him meaningfully. Jack understood. A mechanic who'd been fired had no stake in Grant Tech's corporate games. An enemy, paradoxically, might be the only ally she could trust. They pulled up to a mansion that would have looked at home in a magazine spread on architectural excellence. 3 stories of modern glass and steel, nestled behind a gate that opened automatically as they approached. The driveway curved through perfectly manicured landscaping toward a house lit up like a beacon. Jack pulled up to the front entrance just as a silver Mercedes arrived behind them. A man in his 60s emerged, carrying a medical bag, Dr. Matthews, presumably. He took one look at Sophia through the windshield and quickened his pace. Jack helped Sophia out of the car, then lifted Emma, who was now fully asleep, from the back seat. The girl weighed almost nothing, all skinny limbs and dark curls. She stirred slightly as Jack carried her, murmuring, "Mommy," in a voice that broke something in his chest. He had a daughter. He knew exactly how precious, how irreplaceable children were. The thought of Lena in Emma's place made his jaw clench with protective fury. Inside, the house was everything Jack expected from a tech CEO worth hundreds of millions. Minimalist furniture that probably cost more than his annual salary, art on the walls that looked like it belonged in museums, floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city's glittering skyline. Upstairs, Sophia directed, leading them to a bedroom that was clearly Emma's. Purple walls, of course, stuffed animals arranged on a window seat, a telescope pointed at the night sky. Jack laid the girl on her bed, removing her shoes and pulling a blanket over her. She didn't wake. Back downstairs, Dr. Matthews was already examining Sophia's wound in the kitchen, which was larger than Jack's entire apartment. The doctor worked quickly, cleaning the cut, applying a local anesthetic, preparing sutures. "You should file a police report," Dr. Matthews said as he worked, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being listened to. "This was assault, Sophia." "I'll handle it my way," Sophia replied, wincing as the needle pierced skin. The doctor glanced at Jack, who stood near the doorway, suddenly uncertain of his place in this world of wealth and power. "And you are?" "Jack Miller. I was nearby when it happened." "Nearby and extremely well trained," Dr. Matthews observed, tying off a stitch. "Military?" "Was. Long time ago." "Not that long," the doctor said, studying Jack's bearing, the way he stood, the alertness in his eyes. "Thank you for helping her. Sophia has a remarkable talent for underestimating danger." "I'm right here, Alan," Sophia said dryly. "Yes, and you're here instead of in an emergency room because you're stubborn." Dr. Matthews finished the last stitch and applied a small bandage. 7 stitches. Keep it clean and dry. I want to see you in 3 days to check for infection. And Sophia, his voice turned serious. Whoever did this meant business. "The angle of this cut suggests they were aiming for your temple. If they'd connected properly, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Sophia's face went pale. "I understand. I hope you do." Dr. Matthews packed his supplies, then gripped Sophia's shoulder gently. "Whatever you're involved in, be careful. You have a daughter who needs you." After the doctor left, silence filled the enormous kitchen. Sophia sat at the marble island, staring at her reflection in the polished surface. Jack remained standing, aware that he was dripping hydraulic oil onto flooring that probably cost more per square foot than his monthly rent. "I should go," he said finally. "Jack?" Sophia's voice stopped him. "Sit down, please." He hesitated, then pulled out one of the bar stools across from her. This close, under the bright kitchen lights, he could see how exhausted she looked. Shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights that predated tonight's attack, worry lines that fame and success hadn't prevented. 2 years ago, Sophia began, her voice carefully neutral, you were working as a safety supervisor in our manufacturing division. A night shift worker, Michael Chen, collapsed due to fumes from a malfunctioning ventilation system. Instead of waiting for emergency services, you carried him out and performed CPR in the parking lot. You saved his life. Jack said nothing. He remembered. He remembered everything about that night. Protocol dictated that the area should have been sealed and evaluated before anyone entered without protective equipment, Sophia continued. You violated that protocol. You also violated the policy against rendering medical aid without authorization from on-site medical staff, who arrived 3 minutes after you began CPR. He would have been dead in 3 minutes, Jack said quietly. I know. Sophia met his eyes. That's what you said at the termination hearing, that you didn't follow rules when someone was dying, that protocols were written by lawyers to protect the company, not the workers, that if I wanted to fire you for saving a man's life, you'd accept it, but you wouldn't apologize. I remember what I said. I fired you anyway. Sophia's voice cracked slightly. I sat in my office and signed the paperwork that ended your employment because our legal team said you'd created liability, because our insurance carrier said your actions opened us to lawsuits, because I was more concerned with protecting the company than honoring what was right. Jack leaned back slightly. Why are you telling me this? Because when I was on my knees in that garage tonight, when I thought those men were going to kill me in front of my daughter, you didn't hesitate. You didn't think about liability or protocol or revenge. You just acted, the same way you acted for Michael Chen. Sophia's hands were shaking again. I've thought about you every day for 2 years, Jack. About the man I punished for having more courage and integrity than I did. About how I chose corporate policy over human decency. About how I became exactly the kind of leader I swore I'd never be. You were trying to protect your company, Jack said. I understood that, even if I hated it. I was trying to protect my image, Sophia corrected. There's a difference. Grant Tech was in the middle of a major acquisition deal. The slightest controversy could have derailed it. So I sacrificed you to keep everything smooth and profitable. She laughed bitterly. The irony is that by choosing short-term stability over doing what was right, I created exactly the kind of corporate culture that led to tonight. A culture where people cover up problems instead of fixing them, where profit matters more than safety, where nobody speaks up because they've watched what happens to people who do. Jack studied her face, looking for deception, for manipulation. He'd learned in the military to read people, to spot the difference between genuine emotion and tactical performance. What he saw in Sophia Grant's eyes was real, shame, regret, and something that looked like determination. What exactly is happening at Grant Tech? He asked. Sophia took a deep breath. About a month ago, I was reviewing incident reports, something I do quarterly, usually just a formality. I noticed a pattern, small accidents, nothing catastrophic, but more frequent than they should be. Equipment malfunctions. Workers reporting symptoms of exposure to chemicals that shouldn't have been in our facilities. I started digging deeper, pulling files that hadn't been flagged for executive review. She stood and walked to a drawer, pulling out a tablet. She tapped the screen a few times, then slid it across the island to Jack. This is what I found. Jack looked at the documents. Inspection reports that had been altered, safety equipment that was months overdue for replacement, maintenance logs that showed repairs were being deferred or skipped entirely. His jaw tightened as he scrolled through page after page of systematic negligence. This is criminal, he said quietly. Yes, and it's been happening for at least 18 months, maybe longer. Someone with high-level access has been systematically covering up safety issues, falsifying reports, and bribing inspectors. Every time a real problem was flagged, it got buried. Who? Sophia's face hardened. Charles Reynolds, my vice president of operations. He's been with Grant Tech since the beginning. I trusted him completely. He has access to everything, reports, systems, personnel files, and he has the most to lose if these safety violations come to light. He approved the acquisition deal I mentioned. He signed off on the integration plans. If it comes out that he knew about these problems and covered them up, he's facing criminal charges, and the company could be liable for hundreds of millions in damages. So he sent those men to intimidate you into silence. Or worse, I don't think they were just supposed to scare me, Jack. I think they were supposed to make sure I never asked another question. The only reason I'm alive is because Emma screamed. Sophia's voice broke. My 7-year-old daughter saved my life by being brave enough to ask for help. Jack pushed the tablet back across the island. You need to go to the authorities, the SEC, the FBI, whoever handles corporate crimes. Tonight proved how dangerous this is. With what evidence? Everything on that tablet was accessed through my personal credentials. Reynolds will claim I'm fabricating data to cover up my own mismanagement. He'll say I'm unstable, paranoid, looking for scapegoats. It'll be my word against his, and he has the backing of half the board. Then you need protection, private security, bodyguards, which he'll interpret as me preparing to go public. He'll accelerate whatever plans he has. No, what I need is proof that can't be dismissed, documentation that shows his direct involvement, testimony from people who saw him give orders to cover things up, the kind of evidence that makes a criminal case airtight. Jack saw where this was going. You want to investigate, secretly. I want to find the truth before anyone else gets hurt, and I want to make sure that when I do go public, Reynolds can't wiggle out of consequences. Sophia leaned forward. I can access files, but I can't interpret technical data the way someone with your background could. I can ask questions, but I can't spot the patterns that would be obvious to someone who's actually worked in manufacturing and safety. I need help, Jack. I need someone who understands systems and protocols, who can look at these reports and tell me exactly how bad this is. You need an expert witness. I need someone I can trust. Someone who has no reason to protect Grant Tech's reputation or Reynolds' career. Someone who's already proven they'll do the right thing even when it costs them everything. Jack stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, the city spread out in a grid of lights, millions of people going about their lives, unaware of the corruption being discussed in this kitchen. He thought about his daughter, Lena, asleep in their small apartment across town. He thought about the life he'd built after the Navy, after Afghanistan, after Grant Tech, a quiet life, simple and safe. Sophia was offering him a chance to walk back into danger, to involve himself in corporate espionage and criminal conspiracies, to paint a target on his back by helping the woman who'd once fired him. Every logical, tactical part of his brain screamed at him to refuse. But then he remembered the files on that tablet. He remembered Michael Chen, blue-faced and dying because a ventilation system had been allowed to fail. He remembered tonight, a 7-year-old girl screaming for her mother's life in a parking garage. He remembered who he'd been once, who he'd sworn to be when he raised his right hand and took an oath to protect people. I have a daughter, Jack said quietly, still looking out the window. She's 8. Her mother died 3 years ago, cancer. Lena is everything to me. Everything I survived Afghanistan for, everything I work for. If I do this, if I help you, I need your word that she stays safe, that whatever happens, she's protected. You have my word, Sophia said immediately. I'll put her in the same security detail I'm arranging for Emma, the best protection money can buy. Jack turned to face her. I don't want your money. I want your promise, as one parent to another, that you'll make sure my daughter is safe, that if this goes wrong, if something happens to me, you'll take care of her. Sophia stood walking around the island to stand before him. She was a foot shorter, battered and bandaged, still wearing clothes stained with her own blood. But there was nothing weak in her eyes as she extended her hand. I promise you, Jack Miller, on everything I have and everything I am, that your daughter will be protected. If you help me expose what's happening at Grant Tech, if you help me stop Reynolds before more people get hurt, I will make sure Lena is safe. You have my word as a mother. Jack looked at her hand for a long moment. 2 years ago, this woman had ended his career. Tonight, she was asking him to risk his life. It was insane, reckless, dangerous. He shook her hand. Then I'm in. Sophia's grip was surprisingly strong. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. When this is over, when Reynolds is in handcuffs and the truth is public, then you can thank me. Until then, we're just two people trying to do the right thing for once. That's more than most people manage, Sophia said quietly. Jack nodded toward the tablet. I'll need copies of everything. Every file, every report, every document you've found. I'll go through them tonight, identify the worst violations, and figure out what additional evidence we need. I'll send everything to a secure email address. Give me a number I can reach you at. Jack rattled off his cell number, then hesitated. One more thing. If we're doing this, if we're going after Reynolds, we do it smart. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. We gather evidence, we build an airtight case, and we let the authorities handle the arrest. I'm not a vigilante, and neither are you. Understood? Understood. Good. Jack moved toward the door, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind the familiar ache of old injuries and older sorrows. Get some sleep. Keep Emma home from school tomorrow. And Sophia, he turned back. Check your security system. Make sure it's actually secure, not just connected to Grant Tech's network. If Reynolds has the access you think he does, he might be monitoring you already. Sophia's face paled. I hadn't thought of that. That's why you need me. Jack managed a tired smile. I'll be in touch tomorrow. Until then, trust no one from the company. No assistants, no security guards, nobody. You never know who's on his payroll. He left her standing in that enormous kitchen, walked back out to the Tesla, and realized he'd driven her car here. His truck was still back at Grant Tech, parked in the maintenance bay where he'd abandoned it to respond to a child's scream. Sophia appeared in the doorway. Keep the car tonight. I'll have someone drive your truck to your address tomorrow. You don't know my address. Jack, I fired you. Of course I know your address. It's in your personnel file. Despite everything, Jack almost laughed. Right. Okay, I'll bring this back tomorrow. Take your time. I have others. Of course she did. Jack drove through the empty streets toward his neighborhood, his mind already working through what he'd seen in those files. Safety violations, covered-up accidents, falsified reports. It added up to something catastrophic waiting to happen, not just financial liability, but real danger to real people. Workers who trusted their employer to keep them safe. Families who depended on those workers coming home alive. People like Michael Chen, whose only crime had been showing up for his shift the night a ventilation system failed. People like Jack himself, whose only crime had been caring more about saving a life than following protocol. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Everything's attached. Thank you for not walking away. Jack pulled into his apartment complex. A modest building in a working-class neighborhood where mechanics and teachers and nurses lived, where kids played in the courtyard and nobody asked questions about the past. Home. He climbed the stairs to his second-floor unit and unlocked the door as quietly as possible. Inside, the apartment was dark except for a nightlight in the hallway. Jack could see his daughter's bedroom door, slightly ajar the way she liked it, so she could hear him when he came home from late shifts. He walked to her doorway and looked in. Lena was asleep, her dark hair spread across the pillow, one arm wrapped around a stuffed penguin she'd had since she was 3. She looked peaceful, safe, innocent of the darkness that existed in the world. Jack had lost his wife to cancer. He'd lost his career to corporate bureaucracy. He'd nearly lost his life in Afghanistan. But he'd never lost his daughter, and he never would. If helping Sophia Grant meant Lena stayed safe, if exposing Charles Reynolds meant other daughters wouldn't lose their parents to preventable accidents, then the choice was already made. He closed Lena's door gently and walked to his laptop. The files from Sophia were already there, dozens of documents that told a story of systematic corruption and deliberate endangerment. Jack opened the first file and began to read. Outside, the city slept. Inside, a former Navy SEAL and a tech CEO had just declared war on a man who'd already proven he was willing to kill. The question wasn't whether things would get worse. The question was how many people would survive when they did. Jack read until dawn, taking notes, cross-referencing reports, building a timeline of negligence that made his hands shake with suppressed rage. By the time sunlight crept through his window, he understood 3 things with absolute certainty. First, Charles Reynolds wasn't just covering up safety violations. He was actively creating them, cutting maintenance budgets and deferring repairs to boost short-term profits and his own bonuses. Second, at least 4 workers had died in the past 18 months due to equipment failures that Reynolds had known about and ignored. 4 families destroyed, 4 preventable deaths. Third, there was another incident coming. The pattern in the data was clear. Failures were accelerating, clustering around specific equipment that was overdue for replacement by more than a year. Something was going to break catastrophically, and soon. Jack sent a text to Sophia's number. "We need to meet. Today. This is worse than you know." The reply came immediately despite the early hour. Grant Park. North Bench by the fountain, 10 a.m. Come alone. Jack checked the time, 7:30 a.m. He had 2.5 hours to get Lena ready for school, drop her off, and make it to the park. He stood, joints protesting the night spent hunched over a laptop, and walked to his daughter's room. Time to tell her that her dad was about to do something dangerous. Time to hope that this time, doing the right thing wouldn't cost him everything. Time to remember that some fights were worth having, even when you knew they'd leave scars. Jack opened Lena's door and smiled as she stirred, mumbling something about pancakes in her sleep. Whatever came next, whatever dangers waited in the shadows of corporate corruption and desperate men, this moment was real, pure, worth fighting for. He'd been a SEAL. He'd been a safety supervisor. He'd been a mechanic. Now he was going to be something else. The man who made sure Charles Reynolds answered for what he'd done. And nothing, not threats, not violence, not the entire weight of Grant Tech's corporate machinery was going to stop him. The war had begun. Lena was halfway through her chocolate chip pancakes when she noticed something different about her father. Jack stood at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee with the same practiced movements he made every morning, but his shoulders carried a tension that hadn't been there yesterday. His eyes kept drifting to the window, scanning the parking lot below with the alertness she recognized from the stories he sometimes told about his time in the Navy. "Dad?" Lena set down her fork, maple syrup dripping from the bite she'd been about to take. "Are you okay?" Jack turned, and the smile he gave her was genuine but weighted with something she couldn't quite name. He walked over and sat down across from her, his coffee mug warming his hands. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking about work." "You always think about work." Lena studied his face with the peculiar insight that children sometimes possess, the ability to sense when adults are editing the truth. "But this is different. You look like you did when Mrs. Patterson's cat got stuck in the tree and you had to climb up to get it. Worried, but also kind of excited." Jack laughed despite himself. "You're too smart for 8 years old, you know that? That's what Mr. Henderson says in math class." Lena took another bite of pancake, still watching him. "Are you in trouble?" "No, baby, I'm not in trouble." Jack reached across the table and took her hand, noting how small it seemed in his calloused palm. "But I need to talk to you about something important." Lena's eyes widened slightly. In her experience, conversations that started this way led to either very good news or very bad news, with no middle ground. "Okay. You remember last night when I came home late? I helped someone who was in danger, a woman and her little girl. They were being hurt by some bad men, and I stopped it." "Like a superhero?" Lena's face brightened. "Not quite. More like being in the right place at the right time and knowing what to do." Jack squeezed her hand gently. "The thing is, the woman I helped needs more assistance. She's trying to fix something wrong at her company, and she asked me to help her. It's the right thing to do, but it might be a little dangerous." Lena's brightness dimmed. "How dangerous?" "I don't know yet. Probably not very, but I wanted you to know because for the next few weeks, there might be some changes. I might work different hours. There might be some extra security around our building just to be safe. And I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If anyone you don't know tries to talk to you, at school, at the park, anywhere, you don't talk to them. You find a teacher or another trusted adult immediately. And if anyone asks you questions about me or where I am or what I'm doing, you tell them you don't know and then you call me right away. Can you do that?" Lena's face had gone serious, the childish excitement replaced by something older, wiser. She'd lost her mother at 5 years old. She understood, better than most children her age, that the world could be unpredictably cruel. "Is this like Afghanistan?" Like when you were a SEAL and you had to do dangerous things to protect people? Jack's throat tightened. He'd told Lena sanitized stories about his service, carefully edited to remove the blood and terror and loss. But she'd filled in some of the blanks herself, the way children do, constructing an understanding from overheard conversations and unguarded moments. A little bit like that, he admitted. But I'm not in the military anymore. I'm just helping someone do the right thing. And I promise you, I'm going to be careful. I'm going to come home every single day. You believe me? Lena nodded slowly. I believe you, but Dad, you have to promise me something too. What's that? You have to promise that if it gets too dangerous, if the bad people try to hurt you, you'll stop. You'll walk away. Because Mom's already gone and you're all I have left and I can't. Her voice cracked, tears suddenly spilling down her cheeks. I can't lose you too. Jack was around the table in an instant, pulling his daughter into his arms, feeling her small body shake with sobs against his chest. This was the fear she carried, he realized. The terror that lived beneath her smiles and her homework and her normal 8-year-old concerns. The knowledge that people you loved could disappear, that safety was an illusion, that tomorrow was never guaranteed. Listen to me. Jack pulled back slightly, tilting Lena's chin up so she had to look at him. I am not going anywhere. I survived a war. I survived an explosion that should have killed me. I survived losing your mom. I'm tough, Lena. Tougher than those bad men. Tougher than whatever challenges come. And you know why? Lena shook her head, tears still streaming. Because I have you. Because every single morning I wake up and see your face and remember why I fought so hard to come home from Afghanistan. You are my reason for everything, and I would never ever take unnecessary risks that might take me away from you. So yes, I promise. If this gets too dangerous, I'll walk away. Deal? Lena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Deal. They finished breakfast in comfortable silence, the kind that only exists between people who've weathered storms together. Jack cleaned the dishes while Lena packed her backpack, and by the time they walked to his truck, she'd recovered her usual cheerfulness, chattering about a science project on solar systems and her friend Madison's upcoming birthday party. Jack dropped her at school, watching until she disappeared through the doors, then checked his mirrors for the third time. No suspicious vehicles. No one obviously watching. But Charles Reynolds was smart and well-funded. If he wanted Jack followed, it would be subtle. Grant Park at 9:45 was exactly what you'd expect from a city park on a weekday morning, joggers completing their circuits, elderly couples feeding pigeons, a few homeless individuals sleeping on benches in the autumn sunshine. Jack arrived early, took a position near the north fountain where he could watch approaches from 3 directions, and waited. Sophia appeared at precisely 10 o'clock, walking alone in jeans and a loose sweater, her hair hidden under a baseball cap, large sunglasses covering half her face. The bandage on her forehead was smaller today, less conspicuous. She looked like any other professional taking a break from her office, not a CEO worth hundreds of millions. She sat down beside him, both of them facing the fountain, not looking at each other directly. The posture of 2 strangers sharing a public bench. You weren't followed? Jack asked quietly. I took 3 different cars and 4 detours. If anyone tracked that, they deserve to find me. Sophia pulled out her phone, ostensibly checking messages. You said this was worse than I knew. 4 people are dead, Sophia. Not injured, not hospitalized. Dead. And Reynolds knew the equipment that killed them was faulty. He watched her freeze, her fingers stopping their movement across the screen. 4. I only found records of 2 accidents. Because the other 2 were classified as unrelated incidents. One was ruled a heart attack, a 52-year-old man who collapsed during his shift. Except the autopsy showed elevated levels of carbon monoxide in his blood. The ventilation system in his sector had been flagged for replacement 8 months earlier. Reynolds deferred it. Jack's voice was flat, controlled, but anger simmered beneath. The other was listed as a vehicle accident. Night shift supervisor driving home after work crashed into a barrier, except his brake lines had corroded due to exposure to industrial solvents that shouldn't have been present in the parking area. Those solvents were the result of a storage leak that was reported and ignored. Sophia's hand had gone to her mouth. Oh my God. There's more. I ran the maintenance projections based on the data you sent me. There's a hydraulic press in Building C that's operating at 130% of its rated pressure capacity. The relief valves are shot. The emergency shutoffs haven't been tested in 14 months. Reynolds signed off on a work order to replace the whole system, then canceled it 6 weeks later to reassess budget priorities. What happens if that press fails? Catastrophic pressure release. Anyone within 20 feet gets hit with hydraulic fluid at temperatures exceeding 400 degrees and pressures that can punch through steel. It would be like detonating a bomb. Jack finally turned to look at her. That press operates during second shift. 40 people work in Building C during second shift. 40, Sophia. Sophia was shaking, not dramatically, but enough that Jack could see the tremor in her hands, the slight movement of her shoulders. When? When is this going to happen? I can't predict exactly. Could be today. Could be 3 months from now. But the failure rate is accelerating. Every day that equipment runs, the probability increases exponentially. Then we shut it down. Right now. I'll call the plant manager and tip off Reynolds that you're onto him, Jack interrupted. He'll know you've been digging into maintenance records. He'll accelerate whatever plans he has, cover his tracks better, maybe come at you harder than he did in that parking garage. We need to be smarter than that. Sophia turned to face him fully. Jack, we're talking about 40 lives. I can't let those people go to work today knowing that equipment might kill them just to protect an investigation. I'm not suggesting we do nothing. I'm suggesting we do it carefully. Jack pulled out his own phone, showing her a document he'd prepared. I've drafted an anonymous OSHA complaint. It's detailed enough to force an inspection, but vague enough about the source. We submit this. OSHA shows up for a surprise inspection tomorrow or the next day. They red tag that press and anything else that's critically unsafe. Work stops until repairs are made. Reynolds will know it was me. He'll suspect, but he won't know for sure. It could be a disgruntled worker, a union rep, a night janitor who saw something. There are 1,000 people who have access to that building. He can't come after all of them. Jack met her eyes. This buys us time. OSHA inspects, flags the violations, and while Reynolds is scrambling to manage that crisis, we dig deeper. We find the evidence that proves he didn't just neglect maintenance. He deliberately covered up known hazards. That's the difference between civil liability and criminal charges. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, weighing the variables, calculating the risks. Finally, she nodded. Submit the complaint, but I want hourly updates on the inspection status. And if OSHA doesn't move fast enough, I'm pulling the fire alarm in Building C myself if I have to. Fair enough. Jack pocketed his phone. Now tell me about Reynolds. I need to understand who we're dealing with. What makes him tick? What his weaknesses are? Where his loyalty ends? Sophia leaned back against the bench, her face tilted toward the sun, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. To anyone watching, she looked relaxed. Jack knew better. Charles Reynolds joined Grant Tech when we were still operating out of a garage, she began. I had the vision, the technical knowledge, but Charles had operational experience. He'd been COO at 2 other tech companies, both successful exits. He was older, seasoned, and he believed in what we were building, or at least I thought he did. Money talks louder than vision, Jack observed. Always. We went public 5 years ago. Charles's stock options made him wealthy overnight. Not as wealthy as me, but enough that he should never have to work again. Except wealth has a funny way of changing people. It's never enough. There's always someone richer, always another milestone to hit. So he started cutting corners to boost profits. I think it was more gradual than that. A deferred maintenance cycle here, a delayed equipment replacement there. Small decisions that saved money in the short term. Each one probably seemed reasonable in isolation, but they accumulated. And at some point, Charles crossed a line from optimization to negligence. When the first accident happened, the one I knew about, the machine operator who lost 3 fingers, I wanted to do a complete safety review. Charles convinced me it was an isolated incident, that the worker had violated protocol. I trusted him. And the second accident? Sophia's jaw clenched. Same story. Isolated incident, worker error, bad luck. Charles was very good at making me feel like I was overreacting, like implementing stricter safety measures would slow production and hurt competitiveness. And I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Because questioning Charles meant questioning my own judgment and making him VP. It meant admitting I'd been blind. You weren't blind, Jack said. You were busy running a company. You delegated operations to someone you trusted. That's not a character flaw. It is when people die because of it. Sophia's voice was sharp with self-recrimination. I saw the budget reports. I approved the deferrals, the cuts. Maybe I didn't understand the technical implications, but I knew we were spending less on maintenance. I knew equipment was aging. I should have asked harder questions. Should have doesn't matter now. What matters is what you do next. Sophia pulled off her sunglasses, looking at him directly. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. What if we can't prove it? What if Charles has covered his tracks too well? What if he walks away from this? Then we make sure the safety issues get fixed anyway, Jack said. We make sure no one else dies in your facilities. We make sure every piece of equipment is inspected and repaired. That's the baseline, Sophia. Justice for what Charles did is important, but preventing future deaths is essential. You sound like a SEAL. Former SEAL. But yeah, some things stick. Mission first. Protect the innocent. Win at all costs, but never at the cost of your integrity. A jogger passed their bench, earbuds in, oblivious to the conversation happening in plain sight. Sophia watched him disappear down the path before speaking again. There's something else. Something I haven't told you. Jack waited. 2 weeks ago, I received an email, unsigned, sent from a burner account. It said, "Stop asking questions or your daughter pays the price." I thought it was spam, some random threat from an internet troll. But now you realize it was from Reynolds. From him or from someone working for him, which means he's been watching me longer than I thought. Which means Emma's already a target. Jack's hands tightened into fists. Threatening children was a line that, once crossed, removed all restraint, all mercy. Where's Emma now? Private school, 24-hour security, gated campus. I told them this morning that no one picks her up except me, regardless of what authorization they might have. But I can't keep her there forever. Eventually, she has to come home. Then we make your home fortress. Jack was already thinking tactically, evaluating sight lines and entry points and defensive positions. I'll come by tonight, assess your security, make recommendations. You're going to need cameras, reinforced locks, maybe a safe room, and you need a protection detail, professionals, not rent-a-cops. I already called a security company this morning. They're sending someone this afternoon. Good. I'll vet them. And Sophia? Jack's voice dropped. If Reynolds or anyone working for him comes near Emma, I will end it, permanently. You need to know that about me. I don't make threats and I don't bluff. Children are off limits, always. The men who violate that rule don't get arrested. They get buried. Sophia should have been shocked, should have protested the casual promise of violence. Instead, she simply nodded. Thank you. They sat in silence for a moment, two parents united by the primal need to protect their children from monsters who wore business suits and sat in boardrooms. Finally, Jack stood. I need to get back to work. If I'm not there for my shift, someone might notice. As far as anyone at Grant Tech knows, I'm just a mechanic who happened to be in the right place last night. What do I do? Go to your office, act normal. Don't change your routine dramatically. But Sophia, trust no one. Not your assistant, not your head of security, not your oldest friend on the board. Reynolds has had months to position his pieces. We don't know who's compromised. That's a lonely way to live. Jack gave her a sad smile. Yeah, it is. But lonely is better than dead. He walked away, taking a different path than the one he'd arrived on, checking reflections in car windows and storefront glass for followers. Sophia waited 5 minutes before leaving in the opposite direction. Two strangers who'd shared a bench and nothing more. Jack drove to Grant Tech's corporate campus, badged in through the maintenance entrance, and changed into his work uniform in the locker room. The other mechanics were already on their shifts, their voices echoing through the concrete hallways as they discussed football scores and weekend plans. Normal conversations. Normal lives. They had no idea that the building they maintained was a crime scene, that the executives who ignored them in the hallways were potentially murderers. Jack grabbed his tool cart and headed to Building C. The manufacturing floor was exactly as he remembered from the files. A vast space filled with heavy machinery, the air thick with the smell of metal and lubricant and ozone. Workers in safety vests moved between stations, their conversations drowned by the rhythmic thunder of presses and lathes and assembly equipment. The hydraulic press Sophia had asked about stood in the northeast corner, a massive piece of industrial equipment that looked like it belonged in a different era. Jack approached it casually, checking the maintenance tag on its side. Last inspection, 14 months ago. Last service, 18 months. The relief valves should have been replaced at 12 months. The hydraulic line should have been inspected every 6 months. He crouched down, ostensibly checking a connection point, but really examining the seals. They were brittle, cracking at the edges. The pressure gauge on the side read well into the red zone. Every time this press cycled, it was playing Russian roulette with physics. "Can I help you?" Jack turned. A floor supervisor stood behind him, clipboard in hand, expression suspicious. The man's name tag read Morrison. "Just routine inspection," Jack said, standing and wiping his hands on his coveralls. "Maintenance request came through." Morrison frowned. "I didn't authorize any maintenance requests." "Must have come from upstairs then." Jack kept his expression neutral, bored even. Just another mechanic following orders. "You want me to skip it?" No. If it came from upstairs, do it, but I need paperwork for my records." "I'll have the office send you a copy." Jack made a show of examining the press more thoroughly, taking notes on a tablet. "When's the last time you had pressure fluctuations on this unit?" "Couple weeks ago. We reported it, but nothing got fixed. You here to fix it?" "Just assessing right now. Might need parts." Jack tapped the pressure gauge. "You should red tag this until it's serviced. It's running hot." Morrison laughed, not unkindly. "Red tag this? You know how far behind we are on production? I red tag this press and we miss our quotas. And then I'm explaining to Reynolds why we shut down over a gauge that's probably just miscalibrated. Or it's accurate and this thing is about to catastrophically fail." "Not my call, buddy. You want it shut down? You take it up with management." Morrison walked away, already dismissing the conversation from his mind. Jack stared at the press, doing calculations in his head. Pressure, temperature, metal fatigue, statistical failure rates. The numbers weren't good. This equipment was a ticking bomb, and everyone was too worried about production quotas to hear it ticking. He pulled out his phone and texted Sophia. "Building C press is worse than the paperwork showed. Needs immediate shutdown. Hours, not days." Her response came 30 seconds later. "Submitting OSHA complaint now." "How many hours?" Jack looked at the gauge again, at the brittle seals, at the workers moving around the press with casual disregard for the danger they were in. "Impossible to say for certain. But I wouldn't work this floor tomorrow." "Understood." Jack finished his inspection, documenting everything with photos and notes that would never appear in any official report. Then he moved on to his other assigned tasks, playing the role of mechanic, all while planning what would come next. The afternoon crawled by with excruciating normalcy. Jack repaired a conveyor belt, replaced a faulty motor, helped a younger mechanic diagnose a wiring problem. He ate lunch in the break room, listening to conversations about football and divorces and someone's new truck. He smiled at appropriate moments, grunted agreement when expected, and all the while his mind was elsewhere, cataloging security weaknesses, planning contingencies, considering what Charles Reynolds would do when OSHA showed up. At 3 p.m., his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Alan Matthews. Sophia asked me to check on her friend's daughter. I have an opening at 4:30 if you'd like to bring Lena in for a wellness visit. Complimentary." Jack stared at the message, understanding its subtext. Sophia was making sure Lena was looked after, kept safe, given access to medical care without questions or paperwork that could be traced. It was a generous gesture and a tactical one. Matthews could document Lena's health, establishing a baseline in case anything happened. He texted back, "I'll be there, thank you." Jack left work at 3:30, picked up Lena from school, and drove to Dr. Matthews' private practice in the medical district. The office was exactly what Jack expected. Tasteful art on the walls, comfortable furniture, the kind of place where people with money came for health care that didn't involve insurance forms or waiting rooms full of sick people. Matthews greeted them personally, shaking Lena's hand with the gentle formality of someone who respected children. "You must be Lena. Your father tells me you're quite the scientist." Lena beamed. "I'm doing a project on Jupiter. Did you know it has 79 moons?" I did not know that. That's fascinating. Matthews led them to an examination room. Why don't we make sure you're healthy enough to explore Jupiter someday? The examination was thorough. Height, weight, reflexes, hearing, vision. Matthews asked questions about school and diet and sleep, all while making Lena laugh with terrible jokes about astronauts and planets. Jack watched, grateful for this small kindness, this moment of normalcy in a situation that was anything but normal. When the exam was finished, Matthews pulled Jack aside while Lena looked at anatomical posters in the hallway. She's perfectly healthy, strong, bright, well-adjusted. You're doing a good job with her. Thanks to people like you, Jack said, and Sophia. She didn't have to do this. Sophia is trying to make amends for a lot of things. Matthew's voice was kind but firm. Whatever you two are planning, whatever you're investigating, be careful. The men who beat her in that garage weren't amateurs. They knew what they were doing. If they come back, they won't get close enough. Jack's voice carried absolute conviction. Not to her, not to Emma, not to Lena. I fought wars, Doctor. This is just another kind of combat. Matthews studied Jack's face for a long moment. I believe you. But remember, wars have casualties. Sometimes the people fighting them forget that winning doesn't matter if you lose everything in the process. Jack didn't have an answer for that. They left the medical building as the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Lena chattered about Dr. Matthews and his funny jokes, about how he'd let her listen to her own heartbeat through the stethoscope, about the lollipop she'd been given on the way out. Dad? She asked as they drove home. Is Dr. Matthews the friend you're helping? The woman with the daughter? He's her doctor. But yes, she's the friend. What's her daughter's name? Emma. She's 7, a year younger than you. Lena was quiet for a moment, processing. Is she okay? After the bad men hurt her mom? She's scared, but she's brave like you. Maybe she could come over sometime. We could work on my Jupiter project together. It might help her feel better. Jack's throat tightened with emotion. His daughter, in the middle of fear and uncertainty, thinking about how to help another child feel safe. That's a wonderful idea, sweetheart. I'll ask her mom. That evening, after Lena was in bed, Jack drove to Sophia's mansion. This time he arrived in his own truck, parking in the circular driveway beside 2 unmarked SUVs that screamed private security. Sophia answered the door herself, still wearing business attire but looking somehow diminished, smaller, as if the weight of the day had physically compressed her. They're here, she said, gesturing to the SUVs. 4 guards working in shifts, former Secret Service, according to their credentials. I'll verify that. Jack stepped inside. Where are they positioned? 2 at the front, rotating, 1 monitoring the security feeds, 1 with Emma. Show me the security room. Sophia led him through the mansion to a room that had probably been a home office before being converted into a surveillance center. Monitors showed feeds from a dozen cameras covering every approach to the house. A guard sat at the console, early 50s, military bearing, alert eyes that tracked Jack's entrance with professional assessment. This is Jack Miller, Sophia introduced. He's helping me with security evaluation. The guard stood, extending a hand. Marcus Chen, you're the one from the parking garage. Jack shook his hand, noting the strength in the grip, the calluses that spoke of regular weapons training. That's right. Good work. Those men won't be walking straight for a while. Chen's voice carried approval. You have a military background? Navy, Special Operations. You? Marine Corps, Force Recon. 20 years. Chen gestured to the monitors. I've been reviewing the property. Good sight lines, solid perimeter, but the landscaping creates blind spots near the west wall. I'd recommend cutting back the trees there, adding motion sensors. Jack studied the feeds, his tactical mind cataloging vulnerabilities. Chen was right about the blind spots, but there were other issues too. The cameras covered approaches, but not fallback positions. Escape routes weren't clearly marked, and there was no redundancy in the power systems. How long can this system run on battery backup if someone cuts your power? Jack asked. 4 hours according to the specs. Not enough. You need at least 12, preferably 24, and you need a generator on site tested weekly. The control room should have steel-reinforced doors and a secondary exit. Right now, if someone breaches that door, you're trapped. Chen pulled out a notepad, scribbling notes. You're thinking like someone expecting a siege. I'm thinking like someone who's seen how fast things can go wrong. Jack pointed to one of the monitors showing Emma's room. The child's room needs additional hardening, reinforced window glass, a panic button directly wired to a monitoring station, and a secondary lock on the inside of the door that only she can open. Sophia had been listening silently. You really think someone would come into my home, into my daughter's room? I think Charles Reynolds has already proven he's willing to hurt you to protect his secrets. Your daughter is leverage. The question isn't whether he'd use her, it's when. Jack turned to face Sophia directly. You need to prepare for the worst-case scenario, which means treating your home like a stronghold and your daughter like a protectee. She's 7 years old, Jack. I can't turn her life into a military installation. You can make her feel safe while being safe. Chen, your team, are they armed? Concealed carry? Yes. Licensed in this state. Good. Rules of engagement? Threat assessment, graduated response, lethal force authorized if imminent danger to the protectee or dependents. Jack nodded approval. Establish a safe word with Emma. Something she'd never say by accident. If she uses that word, your team converges on her location immediately, no questions asked. And Sophia, you need to practice lockdown procedures with her. Make it a game if you have to, but she needs to know what to do if something happens. Sophia sank into a chair, her face in her hands. This is insane. A week ago, I was worried about quarterly earnings. Now I'm discussing lethal force protocols and safe words with my 7-year-old. I know. Jack crouched beside her chair, his voice gentling. I know this is overwhelming, but we're doing everything we can to make sure you and Emma stay safe. The security, the preparations, the precautions, they're not because something bad will definitely happen. They're insurance. Most likely, Reynolds won't escalate. Most likely, OSHA will find the violations, force repairs, and he'll be too busy managing that crisis to come after you. But if he does, we'll be ready. Sophia lifted her head, and Jack saw the steel returning to her eyes. All right. Whatever needs to be done, do it. Money isn't an issue. Emma's safety is the only thing that matters. Jack spent the next 2 hours walking the property with Chen, identifying weaknesses, recommending improvements, discussing protocols. By the time he finished, he had a list of modifications that would transform Sophia's home from a house into a defensible position. Not perfect, nothing ever was, but better. Survivable. As he was leaving, Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, a stuffed rabbit clutched in her arms. Mr. Jack? Jack looked up. Hey, Emma, you should be in bed. I know. I just wanted to say thank you for helping my mom, for making the bad men go away. Jack climbed a few steps so he wasn't shouting up at her. You're welcome, sweetheart. Your mom is very brave, and so are you. You did exactly the right thing by calling for help. Are you going to keep us safe? The question was asked with the directness of childhood, unencumbered by adult politeness or deflection. Jack could have given her a comforting lie, could have made promises he wasn't certain he could keep. Instead, he told her the truth. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to keep you safe. I have a daughter too, just a little older than you. Her name's Lena. I protect her the way I'm going to protect you. Emma seemed to consider this. Lena is lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. Now go to bed. Your mom needs you to be well rested. Emma nodded and padded back toward her room, the rabbit dragging on the floor behind her. Sophia appeared in the doorway of her study, having witnessed the exchange. She likes you. She's a good kid. Brave, like her mom. Jack, if this goes wrong, if Reynolds comes after me again and I don't... Sophia's voice cracked. Promise me you'll make sure Emma's okay, that she goes to good people, that she's taken care of. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me anyway. Jack looked at this woman who'd once fired him, who'd punished him for doing the right thing, who was now risking everything to fix the corruption she'd unknowingly enabled. He saw past the CEO, past the public figure, and saw only a mother terrified for her child. I promise. On my daughter's life, I promise you that Emma will be safe. Sophia's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Thank you. Jack left, driving through the quiet streets toward his own apartment, his own daughter, his own small piece of safety in a world that seemed increasingly unstable. Tomorrow, OSHA would arrive at Grant Tech. Tomorrow, the investigation would become official. Tomorrow, Charles Reynolds would realize that someone was coming for him. The war wasn't coming. It was already here, and Jack had just sworn an oath he'd die before breaking. The OSHA inspectors arrived at Grant Tech at 7:42 a.m., 3 of them in an unmarked sedan, carrying clipboards and portable testing equipment. Jack watched from the maintenance bay as they badged in through the main entrance, their arrival triggering an immediate ripple of panic through the administrative floors. Within minutes, executives were scrambling, phone calls were being made, and Charles Reynolds himself appeared in the lobby, his face a careful mask of professional cooperation that didn't quite hide the fury in his eyes. Jack kept his head down, focusing on the air compressor he was supposedly repairing, but his attention was entirely on the scene unfolding across the campus. He'd positioned himself with a clear view of Building C, watching as the inspectors made their way toward the manufacturing floor, Reynolds trailing behind them like a predator stalking prey. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "They're here. Reynolds is with them. He looks ready to kill someone." Jack typed back. "Let him guide them. He'll try to control what they see. That's when he'll make mistakes." He watched through the window as the inspection team entered Building C. 15 minutes passed. 20. Then, at the 30-minute mark, Jack saw what he'd been waiting for. 2 of the inspectors emerged with Reynolds, walking quickly toward the administrative building. Their body language was tense, official. One was already on his phone. Jack's phone rang, Sophia's name on the screen. "They red-tagged it," she said without preamble, her voice tight with relief and tension. "The hydraulic press and 3 other pieces of equipment. Building C is shut down until repairs are completed and re-inspected." How did Reynolds react? He's playing concerned executive, full of shock and promises to investigate how this happened. But Jack, the lead inspector, pulled me aside. He said these aren't recent failures. He said someone had to know this equipment was dangerous and chose not to fix it. Did you act surprised? Academy Award level. Sophia paused. They want to interview the maintenance staff. They want records going back 2 years. Good. Let them have everything. The more they dig, the more they'll find. But Sophia, this is when Reynolds gets dangerous. He knows the walls are closing in. He's going to try to control the narrative, and if he can't do that, he's going to try to eliminate the threat. Meaning me. Meaning both of us, once he figures out I'm involved. You need to stay at the office today, surrounded by people. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't meet anyone privately. And tonight, you and Emma stay home with your security team. What are you going to do? My job. Stay visible, stay normal, stay ready. Jack ended the call and returned to his work, but his mind was racing through scenarios and contingencies. The rest of the morning passed in organized chaos. OSHA inspectors moved through the facility like methodical hunters, finding violations in Building C that led them to inspect other buildings, which revealed more problems. By noon, 4 separate manufacturing areas were partially shut down. A dozen pieces of equipment were red-tagged, and a growing crowd of workers stood in the parking lot, sent home with pay while the inspection continued. Jack was in the break room, eating a sandwich that tasted like cardboard, when Morrison found him. The floor supervisor looked 10 years older than he had yesterday, his face gray with stress. "You called them," Morrison said flatly, sliding into the seat across from Jack. "The inspectors. You saw that press yesterday, and you called OSHA." Jack met his gaze steadily. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't bullshit me, Miller. I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know when equipment is dangerous. I've been reporting problems for months and getting told to keep production running. Then you show up, you look at that press for 5 minutes, and the next day OSHA arrives?" Morrison leaned forward. "I'm not angry. I'm grateful. That press would have killed someone. Probably me, since I'm on the floor 12 hours a day. So thank you for having the guts to do what I should have done months ago." Jack considered his response carefully. If I had made a call like that, it would have been because I saw people in danger and couldn't walk away. Same reason I became a SEAL. Same reason I pulled Michael Chen out of that building 2 years ago instead of waiting for the hazmat team. Morrison's eyes widened slightly. "You're that Miller, the one who got fired for saving Chen's life." That's me. Then Reynolds better watch his back, because if you're half as stubborn as the stories say, he's about to have a very bad time. Morrison stood, extended his hand. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, you call me. I owe you one. Hell, 40 people in Building C owe you their lives. They shook hands, and Morrison left. Jack sat alone, thinking about debts and obligations and the strange mathematics of right and wrong. He'd broken protocol 2 years ago and lost his job. He'd broken protocol again yesterday and might have just saved 40 lives. The outcomes were identical. He'd chosen human life over corporate rules, but the consequences were wildly different. Maybe that was what integrity looked like in practice. Not grand gestures or perfect choices, but the willingness to do the right thing even when the punishment was guaranteed. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a number he didn't recognize. He answered cautiously. Hello? Mr. Miller? A woman's voice, young, frightened. My name is Jennifer Park. I work in Grant Tech's accounting department. I need to talk to you about Charles Reynolds. Me? Jack's instincts screamed trap, but he kept his voice neutral. How did you get this number? From Sophia Grant. She said you were helping her investigate the safety violations. Mr. Miller, I have information, things I've seen in the financial records that I think are connected to what's happening, but I can't talk here. Can we meet somewhere? Where are you now? My office. 3rd floor, accounting wing. Stay there. I'll come to you in 15 minutes. Don't talk to anyone, don't send any emails, don't make any calls. Understood? Understood. Jack ended the call and immediately texted Sophia. Did you give my number to someone named Jennifer Park? The response came quickly. Yes. She came to me this morning, said she found discrepancies in Reynolds' expense reports and maintenance budgets. I thought you should hear it directly. Next time, warn me first. Sorry. She seemed terrified. I made a judgment call. Jack left the break room and made his way to the administrative building, taking the stairs to the 3rd floor. The accounting wing was a maze of cubicles and small offices, the fluorescent-lit domain of people who spent their days reconciling numbers and tracking expenses. He found Jennifer Park's office near the back, a cramped space barely larger than a closet, the walls covered in spreadsheets and post-it notes. Jennifer herself was maybe 28, Korean-American, wearing glasses that kept sliding down her nose as she nervously pushed them back up. She jumped when Jack knocked on her open door. Mr. Miller? She stood quickly, closing the door behind him and pulling the blinds. Thank you for coming. You said you have information about Reynolds. Jennifer nodded, pulling up files on her computer. I've been with Grant Tech for 3 years. I'm a junior accountant, which means I get assigned all the tedious reconciliation work that senior accountants don't want to do. Last month, I was reconciling maintenance expenditures against approved budgets, and I found something strange. She turned her monitor so Jack could see. Rows of numbers, dates, vendor names. See this? July through September, we budgeted $800,000 for equipment maintenance and replacement, but we only spent $400,000. The other $400,000 was redirected to a discretionary fund controlled by Reynolds. That's not necessarily illegal, Jack said. Executives move money between budget categories all the time. Right, but then I looked at what the discretionary fund was used for. Jennifer pulled up another spreadsheet. Corporate retreats, executive bonuses, consulting fees paid to companies that, when I researched them, don't seem to exist. Mr. Miller, Reynolds has been systematically diverting maintenance funds to pad his own compensation and create slush funds. Jack leaned closer to the screen, his mind putting pieces together. He's been cutting maintenance budgets to increase profit margins, which triggers performance bonuses. Then he's taking the savings and funneling some of it back to himself through fake consulting contracts. Exactly. And it's not just maintenance. He's done the same thing with safety training budgets, equipment inspection schedules, even worker compensation reserves. Jennifer pulled off her glasses, rubbing her eyes. I started tracking it 3 weeks ago. I found almost $2 million that should have been spent on safety and operations but was redirected to Reynolds' slush funds or used to inflate profit numbers. Did you report this to anyone? I tried to report it to my supervisor. He told me I was misunderstanding the accounting and to focus on my assigned work. When I pushed, he said that questioning executive decisions was outside my pay grade. Jennifer's voice shook. Then yesterday, Someone went through my desk. Nothing was taken, but my files were moved. My computer showed login attempts when I wasn't here. Someone knows I'm looking into this. Jack felt cold certainty settle in his gut. You need to get out of this building, right now. What? But, Jennifer, listen to me. Charles Reynolds has already sent men to assault Sophia Grant. He's covered up safety violations that killed 4 people. If he knows you found evidence of embezzlement and fraud, you're a threat. He will eliminate that threat. The color drained from Jennifer's face. Oh my God. Copy everything you have to a flash drive. Not your company laptop, not the network drive, a physical device that leaves this building with you. Then you go home, you pack a bag, and you go stay with family or friends somewhere Reynolds can't find you. I can't just leave. I have work. You have information that could send a powerful man to prison for decades. Work doesn't matter if you're dead. Jack's voice was harsh but necessary. Make the copies now. I'll wait. Jennifer fumbled in her desk drawer, pulling out a flash drive with shaking hands. She plugged it in and started copying files, her fingers flying across the keyboard. This is going to take a few minutes. There are hundreds of documents. Jack moved to the door, checking the hallway through the blinds. Accounting wing was quiet, most people at lunch or in meetings, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The time was running out. How much longer? Almost done. Jennifer froze, staring at her screen. Someone's accessing my computer remotely, right now. They're trying to delete the files I was just copying. Can you stop it? I can log them out, but they'll know I caught them. Jennifer's hands hovered over the keyboard. Mr. Miller, what do I do? Jack made the decision in a split second. Log them out. Finish the copy, then we leave immediately. Jennifer's fingers moved, clicking through security protocols. The remote access terminated. The file transfer completed. She ejected the flash drive and handed it to Jack. That's everything. Financial records, vendor contracts, email correspondence, budget reallocation forms. It's all there. Jack pocketed the drive. Let's go. They left Jennifer's office and moved quickly toward the stairwell. Jack's tactical sense screamed warnings. They were exposed, predictable, walking into a potential ambush. But the elevators were worse, too easy to trap, and the stairwell at least offered multiple exit points. They'd made it halfway down the hall when a man emerged from around the corner, tall, professionally dressed, moving with purpose directly toward them. Jack recognized him from the security badge photo he'd seen in Sophia's files. David Kramer, Reynolds' head of corporate security. Ms. Park, Kramer said pleasantly, his smile not reaching his eyes. Mr. Reynolds would like to speak with you about some accounting irregularities you flagged. If you could come with me? I'm actually heading to lunch, Jennifer said, her voice admirably steady. I can meet with Mr. Reynolds this afternoon. I'm afraid Mr. Reynolds is insistent. It will only take a few minutes. Kramer's eyes shifted to Jack. And you are? Maintenance. I was fixing Ms. Park's radiator. It's been making noise. Kramer's smile widened fractionally. Jack Miller, I've heard about you. The hero from the parking garage. Quite a coincidence, you being everywhere important things happen. I work here. It's not that much of a coincidence. Well, Mr. Miller, your services aren't needed right now. Miss Park, shall we? Kramer took a step forward. Jack shifted slightly, positioning himself between Kramer and Jennifer, his weight balanced, ready to move. The hallway suddenly felt smaller, the air charged with unspoken threats. Ms. Park isn't going anywhere with you, Jack said quietly. If Reynolds wants to meet, he can schedule it properly through her supervisor. Kramer's pleasant mask slipped slightly. You don't give orders here, Miller. You're a mechanic. She's an employee who's been accessing confidential files without authorization. That's grounds for immediate termination and possibly criminal charges. Then call the police. File a formal complaint. Do it legally. Jack's voice remained calm, but his eyes were hard. What you don't get to do is intimidate a young woman and try to forcibly remove her from a public hallway. For a moment, Kramer considered his options. Jack could see the calculation happening, whether the confrontation was worth it, whether he could physically overpower both of them, what the consequences would be if this escalated publicly. Finally, Kramer stepped back. This conversation isn't over, Ms. Park. You've made some serious accusations against senior leadership. There will be consequences. Oh, she's made no accusations, Jack said. She's an accountant doing her job. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have lunch plans. Jack guided Jennifer past Kramer, every nerve alert for an attack from behind. But Kramer let them pass, though Jack could feel the man's eyes boring into his back all the way to the stairwell. Once they were in Jack's truck, Jennifer finally let herself shake. Oh my God. Oh my God. That was Kramer. Reynolds' attack dog. Mr. Miller. He was going to take me somewhere, and he was going to intimidate you, possibly hurt you, definitely destroy any evidence you had. But you're safe now. Jack pulled out of the parking lot, checking his mirrors obsessively. Where do you live? Jennifer gave him an address in a suburb 20 minutes away. Jack drove there, still checking mirrors, still watching for followers. When they arrived at her apartment complex, he walked her to her door. Pack a bag, he told her. Essentials only. Do you have family you can stay with? My sister lives 2 hours north. I can go there. Perfect. Do that today. Don't tell anyone from work where you're going. Turn off your phone's location services. Use cash, not credit cards that can be traced. And Jennifer? Jack waited until she met his eyes. What you did took courage. That evidence you gathered might save lives. Don't let anyone make you feel like you did something wrong. Jennifer nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you for believing me, for protecting me. Thank you. Jack waited until she was inside and he heard the deadbolt engage, then returned to his truck. He drove 3 blocks before pulling over and calling Sophia. We have a problem, he said when she answered. Reynolds knows someone's investigating him. His security chief just tried to grab Jennifer Park, and she barely got away. Sophia's sharp intake of breath was audible. Is she safe? For now. I sent her to stay with family. But Sophia, this means Reynolds is panicking. He's not thinking strategically anymore. He's in survival mode, which makes him exponentially more dangerous. What do? We accelerate. Jennifer gave me a flash drive with evidence of financial fraud, embezzlement, false accounting, budget manipulation. Combined with the safety violations OSHA is documenting, we have enough to go to the authorities. Today, right now. If we go now, Reynolds will know it was me. He'll know I've been investigating him. He already knows, or at least suspects. That's why he sent Kramer after Jennifer. We're past the point of subtlety. Jack checked his mirrors again, making sure he wasn't being followed. Call your lawyer. A real one, not someone on Grant Tech's payroll. We need to arrange a meeting with the FBI's white-collar crime division and possibly the state's attorney. We hand over everything, Jennifer's files, the maintenance records, the evidence of the assault in the parking garage. We let the authorities take it from here. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. If we do this, Grant Tech's stock will crater. The company I built, everything I've worked for, it'll be destroyed. Maybe. Or maybe it survives because you were brave enough to expose the rot before it killed more people. Either way, Sophia, you don't have a choice anymore. You can lose the company or you can lose your life. I know which one Emma would want you to choose. Another pause, longer this time. Then Sophia's voice came through, steady and resolved. You're right. I'll call my personal attorney. We'll set up a meeting for tomorrow morning with federal investigators. Not tomorrow, today. This afternoon if possible. Every hour we wait is another hour Reynolds has to destroy evidence or come after us. All right, I'll make it happen. Jack, where are you right now? Parked in a random neighborhood, making sure I wasn't followed. Jack started the truck again, pulling back into traffic. I'm going to pick up Lena from school early, take her to stay with a friend's family tonight. I don't want her in our apartment until this is over. Good idea. I'll do the same with Emma. Sophia's voice softened. We're really doing this. We're really going after him. We are. And Sophia, when the investigators ask why you came forward, tell them the truth. Tell them about the workers who died. Tell them about Michael Chen and how your company punished the man who saved his life. Tell them you couldn't let one more person get hurt because of your company's negligence. I will. I promise. Jack ended the call and drove toward Lena's school, his mind already planning the logistics of keeping his daughter safe. He had a friend from his Navy days, Marcus Thompson, who lived 40 minutes away with his wife and 2 kids. Thompson had offered more than once to help if Jack ever needed anything. This qualified. He called Thompson from the truck. Marcus, it's Jack Miller. I need a favor. Name it, brother. I need you to keep Lena for a couple days. I'm involved in something that might get dangerous, and I can't risk her being collateral damage. Thompson didn't hesitate. Bring her over. Sarah will be thrilled. You know she loves having kids in the house. Lena can share Megan's room. I'll explain everything when I get there. But Marcus? If anyone comes asking about her, anyone you don't personally know and trust, you don't tell them anything. You don't even confirm she's there. Thompson's voice turned serious, the easy camaraderie replaced by operational focus. What kind of trouble are you in? The kind that ends with me testifying against someone powerful who's already proven he'll hurt people to protect his secrets. I don't think he knows about Lena yet, but I'm not taking chances. Understood. We've got your 6, Jack. Bring her over whenever you're ready. But Jack picked Lena up from school, watching the other parents in cars with paranoid intensity. Everything looked normal. Minivans and SUVs, mothers and fathers collecting children, the mundane rhythm of suburban life continuing obliviously. Dad, you're early, Lena said as she climbed into the truck, her backpack hitting the seat with a heavy thump. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, sweetheart, but I need you to do me a favor. Remember Uncle Marcus and Aunt Sarah? From your Navy days? With the 2 girls? That's right. I need you to go stay with them for a couple of days, just while I finish helping my friend with her problem. Lena's face fell. But I have school, and my Jupiter project is due on Friday. You can work on your project there, and I already called your school. They know you'll be absent for a few days. Jack reached over and squeezed her shoulder. I know this isn't what you want, honey, but it's important. The situation I'm helping with has gotten more complicated, and I need to know you're somewhere safe. Is someone going to try to hurt me? Lena's voice was small, scared. No, absolutely not. This is just a precaution. Like wearing a seatbelt, you don't expect to need it, but you wear it anyway because it's smart. Jack tried to sound confident, reassuring, even as his gut churned with fear. I promise you, you're going to have fun at the Thompsons. Megan and Claire are excited to see you. Lena nodded slowly, accepting the explanation even if she didn't fully understand it. Okay, but Dad, you have to promise you'll call me every night. Every single night, I promise. They drove to Jack's apartment so Lena could pack a bag, then headed to the Thompson house. The drive took them out of the city into the suburbs, the landscape shifting from urban density to tree-lined streets and larger yards. Thompson's house was a cheerful 2-story with a swing set in the backyard and chalk drawings on the driveway. Sarah Thompson greeted them at the door, pulling Lena into a hug before the girl could even set down her bag. Lena, we're so happy you're staying with us. Megan and Claire are upstairs. They've been bouncing off the walls with excitement all afternoon. Lena managed to smile and headed upstairs, leaving Jack alone with Marcus. The 2 men stood in the kitchen, the pretense of normalcy dropped now that Lena was out of earshot. Talk to me, Marcus said. Jack gave him the abbreviated version: Sophia, Reynolds, the safety violations, the assault, the investigation. Marcus listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. You're poking a bear, Marcus said when Jack finished. A rich, powerful, desperate bear who's already killed people and tried to kill the woman investigating him. Jack, you need to be very careful. Men like Reynolds don't go down easy. I know. That's why Lena's here. That's why I'm meeting with federal investigators this afternoon. I want this documented, official, in the hands of people with badges and subpoena power. What do you need from me? Keep Lena safe. Don't let her use her phone to call anyone except me. I don't know if Reynolds has the capability to track it. Don't post anything on social media about her being here. And Marcus, if something happens to me, it won't. If it does, Jack insisted, Sophia Grant has promised to take care of Lena. She has resources, protection, money. You call her, you make sure Lena gets somewhere safe and stays there until Reynolds is in custody. Marcus gripped Jack's shoulder. Brother, you're talking like you expect to die. You're a SEAL. You've survived worse than some corporate executive with delusions of power. I've survived combat because I prepared for the worst-case scenario every single time. This is no different. Jack pulled out a piece of paper with Sophia's personal number written on it. Keep this somewhere safe, just in case. Marcus pocketed the paper, then pulled Jack into a brief, fierce hug. You finish this mission, and you come back for your daughter. That's an order. Yes, sir. Jack said goodbye to Lena, hugging her tighter and longer than usual, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the lingering sweetness of childhood. When he finally let go, she looked up at him with eyes too old for 8. You're scared, she said. Not a question. An observation. Jack considered lying, considered giving her a false reassurance. Instead, he chose honesty. A little bit. But I'm also prepared, and I'm doing the right thing, which means I have courage on my side. Courage doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do it anyway. Lena smiled, repeating words he'd told her 100 times. You taught me that. Smart kid. Smart dad. Jack kissed her forehead and left before his resolve could weaken. The drive back to the city was the longest 40 minutes of his life, every mile increasing his sense of urgency, of time running out. His phone rang. Sophia's name on the screen. We're set, she said. FBI field office, downtown, 4 p.m., bring everything. I'll be there. Where are you now? My office, surrounded by people. Emma's with her security detail at a private facility, not home, somewhere Reynolds doesn't know about. I've told my assistant I have meetings all afternoon and I'm not to be disturbed. Good. Don't leave your office until it's time to meet. Don't go anywhere alone, not even the bathroom. You think he'd try something here in the building? I think a desperate man will do anything. Better to be paranoid and alive than trusting and dead. Sophia laughed, sharp and humorless. That should be printed on a motivational poster. I'll suggest it to Hallmark. Jack checked his mirrors again, still watching for followers. Sophia, when we meet with the FBI, let me do most of the talking initially. They're going to be skeptical. Accusations against a prominent executive, evidence gathered through questionable means. I've dealt with federal agencies before. I know how to present information in a way that gets them to take action. All right, Jack, thank you for everything. For saving me in that garage, for believing me about Reynolds, for protecting Lena and Emma. I know I don't deserve your help after what I did to you. Stop. Jack's voice was firm but not unkind. We're not doing this. We're not relitigating the past. Right now, in this moment, we're 2 people trying to stop a killer from claiming more victims. That's all that matters. You're a good man, Jack Miller. I'm just a man trying to do the right thing. Sometimes that's enough. He ended the call and continued driving toward downtown, toward the FBI field office, toward the moment where everything would become official and irrevocable. Once they handed over the evidence, once they made their statements, there would be no going back. Reynolds would know. The investigation would become public. The consequences would cascade outward like ripples on a pond, touching everyone involved. Jack thought about the 4 workers who'd died because of Reynolds' greed. He thought about the 40 people in Building C who could have died yesterday if that press had failed. He thought about Michael Chen, blue-faced and dying, and the choice Jack had made 2 years ago to break protocol and save a life. Some choices defined who you were. This was one of them. The FBI field office was an austere concrete building in the federal district, all security checkpoints and metal detectors and stern-faced agents. Jack badged in with his driver's license, submitted to a pat-down, and was escorted to a conference room on the 4th floor. Sophia was already there, sitting across from 2 agents, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and sharper questions, and a younger man taking notes on a tablet. They both stood when Jack entered. Jack Miller? The woman asked, extending a hand. I'm Special Agent Patricia Reeves, White Collar Crimes Division. This is Agent Daniel Torres. Ms. Grant has been explaining the situation. We'd like to hear your perspective. Jack shook hands and sat down, pulling out the flash drive Jennifer had given him. Before we get into perspectives, you need to see this. Financial records showing systematic embezzlement and budget manipulation by Charles Reynolds, Vice President of Grant Tech. The evidence was compiled by a junior accountant who discovered irregularities in maintenance expenditures. Reeves took the drive, plugging it into her laptop. Bullshit. Her expression remained neutral as she scrolled through files, but Jack saw the way her eyes narrowed, the subtle tension in her jaw. These were the reactions of someone seeing evidence of serious crimes. Where's this accountant now? Torres asked. Safe. Away from Grant Tech. She was confronted by Reynolds' head of security this morning. He attempted to forcibly remove her from the building for questioning. I intervened and got her out. Reeves looked up sharply. You intervened how? I stopped a man from intimidating a witness and escorted her to safety. Nothing illegal, nothing violent. But the attempt itself demonstrates Reynolds' awareness that he's being investigated and his willingness to use force to stop it. Reeves leaned back, studying Jack with the calculating gaze of someone trained to spot deception. Ms. Grant mentioned you were assaulted in a parking garage 3 nights ago. She claims Charles Reynolds ordered the attack. I wasn't assaulted, Jack said. Ms. Grant was assaulted by 3 men. I intervened. The attack occurred hours after Ms. Grant began asking pointed questions about safety violations that Reynolds had covered up. Can you prove Reynolds ordered the attack? Not directly, but I can prove the safety violations existed, that Reynolds had direct knowledge of them, and that he systematically falsified reports to hide them. I can prove that 4 workers have died due to equipment failures that were documented and ignored. And I can prove that the timing of the assault correlates precisely with Ms. Grant's investigation becoming a threat to Reynolds' freedom. Torres was typing rapidly. You mentioned 4 deaths. We'll need documentation of each incident. Jack pulled out a folder he'd prepared. Copied incident reports, death certificates when he could find them, maintenance logs showing the equipment failures. Everything organized chronologically, annotated with his own analysis of how each death connected to Reynolds' negligence. Reeves took the folder, her professional mask slipping slightly into what might have been disgust or anger. This is going to take time to verify. We'll need to interview workers, review company records, coordinate with OSHA. OSHA is already on site, Sophia interjected. They arrived this morning in response to an anonymous complaint. They've red-tagged multiple pieces of equipment for critical safety failures. Convenient timing, Reeves observed. Necessary timing, Jack corrected. That equipment was going to fail catastrophically, possibly today, possibly tomorrow, but soon. The anonymous complaint prevented more deaths. I'd think federal investigators would appreciate that. Reeves's eyes flickered with something that might have been respect. Mr. Miller, what's your background? Navy SEAL, 12 years active duty. Medically retired after injuries sustained in Afghanistan. I currently work as a maintenance mechanic at Grant Tech. And you just happened to be present when Ms. Grant was attacked? I heard a child screaming for help in a parking garage. I responded. Yes, I happened to be present. No, there was nothing coincidental about my decision to intervene when I witnessed a violent assault. Torres looked up from his tablet. For the record, Mr. Miller, you have a prior termination from Grant Tech 2 years ago for violating safety protocols. Some might suggest this investigation is motivated by revenge rather than justice. Jack felt anger flash through him, hot and sharp, but he kept his voice level. 2 years ago, I was fired for saving a man's life. Michael Chen collapsed due to fumes from faulty ventilation, the same kind of systematic negligence we're documenting now. I carried him out of a contaminated area and performed CPR. I was terminated for violating protocol. If you think that makes me biased against a company that values paperwork over human life, you're absolutely right. If you think that makes my evidence less credible, you're an idiot. Sophia's eyes widened. Reeves's eyebrows rose. Torres stopped typing. Then Reeves smiled, quick and genuine. Fair enough, Mr. Miller. Let's talk about what happens next. They spent the next 2 hours going through every detail. Dates, names, incidents, financial transactions. Reeves asked pointed questions that would have been aggressive if they hadn't been so obviously aimed at building an airtight case. Torres documented everything, occasionally interjecting with requests for clarification or additional evidence. By 6 p.m., they had covered everything. Reeves closed her laptop and looked at both Jack and Sophia with an expression that was equal parts professional and human. Here's where we are, she said. You've given us probable cause to open a formal investigation into Charles Reynolds for embezzlement, fraud, and criminal negligence resulting in death. We'll be coordinating with OSHA, the SEC, and potentially the state's attorney for criminal charges. But I need to be clear about something. This investigation is going to be public. Grant Tech's stock will almost certainly drop. There will be media coverage. Your lives are about to become very complicated. We understand, Sophia said quietly. I also need to warn you that Reynolds will likely figure out you're the source of the investigation. He may try to discredit you, intimidate you, or worse. We can offer some protection, but federal witness protection is resource-intensive and not always feasible for corporate whistleblowers. We have private security, Jack said. Military grade, we'll be fine. Reeves didn't look convinced, but she nodded. All right, we'll move quickly on this. Warrants for Reynolds' financial records, subpoenas for company documents, interviews with key personnel. I'm hoping to have Reynolds in custody within 72 hours. What about tonight? Sophia asked. What about tomorrow? He already knows something's happening. What's to stop him from running? We'll have agents watching him. If he tries to flee, we'll pick him up. Reeves stood, signaling the meeting was over. Go home. Stay safe. Don't do anything heroic. Let us handle this from here. They left the FBI building together, walking out into the early evening. The city was transitioning from work to night, office workers streaming toward subway stations, restaurants filling with dinner crowds. Life continuing in its normal patterns, oblivious to the investigation that had just been launched. I need a drink, Sophia said as they reached the parking garage. Or 12. You need to go home, lock your doors, and stay put, Jack countered. Reeves was right. Reynolds is going to figure this out fast, and when he does, he'll make a move. Let him. I'm tired of being afraid. But Sophia's voice shook slightly, betraying the bravado. Jack walked her to her car. The Tesla was gone, replaced by an anonymous sedan with tinted windows. Her security detail, he assumed. Smart. Sophia, Jack said as she opened the door, we did the right thing in there. Whatever happens next, remember that. We stopped a killer. We saved lives. Nothing Reynolds does can take that away. Sophia looked at him, and for the first time since the parking garage, she smiled. Really smiled, without fear or calculation. You know what's funny? 2 years ago, I thought you were reckless, dangerously impulsive, someone who couldn't be trusted to follow the rules. Turns out that's exactly what I needed. Life's full of irony. It really is. Sophia got in her car, then rolled down the window. Jack? When this is over, when Reynolds is in prison and the company is rebuilt and our lives return to something resembling normal, I owe you a debt I can never repay. You don't owe me anything. You gave me a chance to do what I do best, protect people. That's payment enough. He watched her drive away, then returned to his own truck. The parking garage was nearly empty now, most workers long gone for the day. Jack's footsteps echoed off concrete as he walked to his vehicle, every sense alert for danger. He was halfway to his truck when he saw it. A piece of paper under his windshield wiper, white against the dark glass. Jack approached carefully, scanning the area for threats. The garage appeared empty, but appearances meant nothing. He pulled the paper free. Block letters written in black marker. You made a mistake. They can't protect you. Jack crumpled the note, his jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. Reynolds knew. Of course he knew. The question was what he'd do about it. Jack got in his truck, locked the doors, and called Marcus Thompson. Is Lena okay? She's fine, playing video games with the girls, eating pizza. Everything's good here. Why? What happened? Reynolds left me a threat. He knows I'm involved. I don't think he knows about Lena yet, but I want you on full alert. Lock all doors and windows. If anyone approaches the house who you don't know personally, you call the police first and me second. Understood? Understood. Jack, do you need backup? I can call some of the guys from our unit. No, this isn't combat. This is law enforcement's problem now. I just need you to keep my daughter safe. She's safe, brother. You have my word. Jack ended the call and sat in his truck, engine running, thinking through scenarios. Reynolds had resources, connections, and desperation. The FBI would move fast, but fast might not be fast enough. 72 hours was the lifetime when you were fighting someone who had nothing left to lose. His phone rang again. Unknown number. Jack answered cautiously. Hello? Mr. Miller. The voice was smooth, cultured, dripping with false courtesy. Charles Reynolds. I believe we should talk. I don't have anything to say to you. Oh, I think you do. You see, I've just had a very interesting conversation with my attorney. It seems federal investigators are requesting documents related to maintenance budgets and safety protocols. They're interviewing my employees, they're building a case, and I can't help but wonder where they got their information. If you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to worry about. Reynolds laughed, cold and humorless. Don't play games with me. You and Sophia have been conducting a private investigation. You've stolen confidential documents. You've intimidated my staff. You've filed false reports with OSHA. These are serious crimes, Mr. Miller. Not as serious as embezzlement and negligent homicide. Alleged embezzlement, alleged negligence. Without proof, which you don't have. You're just a disgruntled former employee making baseless accusations. Reynolds' voice hardened. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call the FBI and retract your statement. You're going to admit you fabricated evidence because you wanted revenge for being fired. You're going to disappear quietly, and in return, I won't destroy you. And if I refuse? Then I destroy you anyway, but much less quietly. I have resources, Mr. Miller, connections, money. I can make your life a living hell. I can ensure you never work again. I can tie you up in lawsuits for years. I can make you wish you'd never heard of Sophia Grant. Jack's voice was ice. Are you threatening me, Reynolds? I'm offering you a way out. Take it while you still can. Here's my counteroffer. You turn yourself in to the FBI. You confess to embezzlement, fraud, and criminal negligence. You cooperate fully with their investigation. And in return, maybe, they show you some mercy. Reynolds' laugh was sharp, brittle. You're not that naive. You're a former SEAL. You understand how the world really works. People like me don't go to prison. People like you, disposable, replaceable, do. We'll see about that. Jack ended the call. For a moment he sat in silence, processing the conversation. Reynolds was scared, which made him predictable. He'd try to discredit Jack and Sophia, try to paint them as vindictive liars. When that failed, he'd escalate. The note on the windshield was just the beginning. Jack started the truck and pulled out of the garage, heading nowhere in particular, just driving to keep moving. His phone rang again, Sophia this time. Reynolds just called me, she said without preamble. He threatened me. He said if I don't recant my statement to the FBI, he'll sue me for defamation and have me removed as CEO for making false accusations against senior management. He called me too. Same threats, different wording. He's panicking. Good. Let him panic. The FBI has our evidence. His threats are empty. Maybe. But Sophia, a cornered animal, is dangerous. Reynolds isn't thinking rationally anymore. We need to be ready for him to do something desperate. Like what? I don't know. But whatever it is, it's coming soon. He doesn't have time to be strategic. The FBI is moving. OSHA is investigating. His world is collapsing. He's going to lash out. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Jack, I'm scared. I know, me too, but we're prepared. You have security. Emma's protected. Lena's safe. We just need to survive the next few days and then it's over. Promise me something. What? Promise me that if it comes down to a choice between catching Reynolds and keeping our daughters safe, you choose the girls. Every time. Jack didn't hesitate. I promise. The mission doesn't matter if the people we love don't survive it. Good. That's the right answer. Sophia's voice softened. Get some rest, Jack. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. She was right about that. What neither of them knew was just how long it would be, or how much blood would be spilled before the sun rose again. Jack didn't go home that night. Instead, he drove to a 24-hour diner on the edge of the city, the kind of place where truckers and insomniacs gathered under fluorescent lights that never dimmed. He ordered coffee he didn't drink and sat in a corner booth where he could watch both entrances, his phone on the table, his mind cycling through contingencies and worst-case scenarios. Reynolds would make a move. The only question was when and how. At 2:17 a.m., Jack's phone lit up with an incoming call from Marcus Thompson. He answered before the first ring finished. What's wrong? Nothing yet, but you need to know. There's a car parked across the street from my house. Has been for the last hour. Dark sedan, tinted windows, engine running. Could be nothing. Could be... It's something. Have you called the police? Not yet. Wanted to check with you first. Jack was already moving, throwing bills on the table and heading for the door. Call them now. Report a suspicious vehicle. Don't mention Lena. Don't mention me, just say there's a car that's been idling outside your house and you're concerned. I'm 40 minutes away. I'll be there as fast as I can. Copy that. Jack drove with the kind of controlled urgency that came from years of tactical operations. Fast but not reckless. Efficient but not panicked. His mind was already 3 steps ahead, calculating what Reynolds might be planning. Surveillance, most likely. Confirmation that Lena was at the Thompson house before attempting something more aggressive. Or maybe just intimidation. A message that Reynolds knew where Jack's daughter was and could reach her anytime he wanted. Either way, it ended tonight. Jack called Sophia as he drove. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with interrupted sleep. Jack, what time is it? Time for you to wake up your security team. Reynolds has someone watching the house where Lena's staying. He's escalating faster than I expected. The fog of sleep vanished from Sophia's voice instantly. Oh my God. Is she safe? For now. Police are on their way and I'm heading there. But Sophia, if Reynolds knows about Lena, he might know about Emma too. You need to move her, tonight, right now, somewhere Reynolds absolutely cannot find. Where? He has resources, connections. You have more. You have money and motivated security and the element of surprise. Pick a location he'd never think of. Not a 5-star hotel, not a corporate safe house. Somewhere ordinary, anonymous, a roadside motel 3 towns over, a friend's cabin in the woods, somewhere off the grid. Sophia was already moving. Jack could hear the rustle of clothing, footsteps on stairs. There's a place. My college roommate's family has a lake house 2 hours north. It's under her maiden name, no connection to me. Reynolds would never find it. Perfect. Take Emma there. Take your security team. And Sophia? Turn off your phone once you're on the road. No credit cards, no traceable communication. You disappear until the FBI picks Reynolds up. What about you? What about Grant Tech? Grant Tech doesn't matter right now. Nothing matters except keeping our daughters safe. Jack checked his rearview mirror for the 100th time, making sure he wasn't being followed. Go, move fast. I'll contact you when it's safe. Jack, Sophia's voice broke slightly. Be careful, please. Always am. He ended the call and pressed harder on the accelerator, the city lights blurring past his windows. The roads were empty at this hour, just the occasional taxi or delivery truck sharing the pavement. Jack pushed his truck to 10 miles over the limit, the maximum speed he could justify if stopped by police, though every instinct screamed at him to go faster. 38 minutes after Marcus's call, Jack turned onto the quiet suburban street where the Thompson house sat dark and peaceful. The suspicious sedan was gone, replaced by a police cruiser parked in front of Marcus's driveway, its lights off, but its presence unmistakable. Jack parked 2 houses down and approached on foot, keeping to the shadows out of habit. A uniformed officer stood on Marcus's front porch, taking notes while Marcus spoke in low tones. Jack waited until the officer returned to his cruiser before approaching. Marcus saw him coming and stepped off the porch to meet him. Police ran the plates. Car was a rental, paid for with a corporate credit card from Grant Tech. Driver left as soon as the cruiser turned onto the street. Did you get a description? White male, 40s, professional looking. Could have been anyone. Marcus's jaw was tight with controlled anger. Jack, what the hell is going on? Why is someone from Grant Tech watching my house in the middle of the night? Jack gave him the abbreviated version. Reynolds, the investigation, the escalation. Marcus listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. So this guy is willing to come after an 8-year-old girl to intimidate you? Looks that way. Then he's dumber than he is corrupt. Marcus gestured toward his house. I've got 3 rifles and 2 handguns in a safe upstairs. I've got training and experience. And I've got 0 patience for men who threaten children. Reynolds wants to come back. He can try. He won't like what he finds. I appreciate that, but I'm not putting your family at risk. I'm taking Lena somewhere else. Somewhere Reynolds can't find. Where? Jack didn't answer immediately. Where could he take his daughter that would be truly safe? Reynolds had money, connections, and apparently no moral boundaries. Anywhere predictable, friends, family, hotels, was potentially compromised. Then it hit him. The one place Reynolds would never think to look because it was so obviously dangerous. I'm taking her to Sophia's lake house, Jack said, the one she's moving Emma to tonight. Reynolds will assume we'd never put both girls in the same location. He'll be looking for them separately, dividing his resources. By keeping them together, we make them easier to protect. Marcus considered this, then nodded slowly. Tactical consolidation. Easier to defend one position than two. Smart. When do you leave? Now. I'll pack Lena's things, let her sleep in the truck until we're out of the city. I'll come with you, extra security. You have a family, Marcus. I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm volunteering. Sarah can take the girls to her mother's for a few days. This guy Reynolds needs to understand that when he threatens the SEAL's family, he's threatening all of us. Marcus's voice carried the flat certainty of a man who'd made a decision and wouldn't be swayed. Give me 10 minutes to talk to Sarah and pack a bag. Jack wanted to argue, wanted to insist that Marcus stay safe with his own family, but the truth was, he needed the help. Two trained operators were exponentially more effective than one, especially when it came to protecting children in a potentially hostile situation. 10 minutes, Jack agreed. Marcus returned to his house while Jack called Sophia again. She answered immediately, breathless and tense. We're on the road. Emma's asleep in the back seat. Security team is following in a second vehicle. Where are you? Still at Marcus Thompson's place. The surveillance car left when police arrived, but I'm not taking chances. I'm bringing Lena to the lake house. My friend Marcus is coming too. Former Force Recon Marine, 20 years experience. Extra security. The more the better. Jack, I'm scared. Really scared. What if Reynolds sends more than just surveillance? What if he sends the same men who attacked me in the garage? Then we stop them. Sophia, listen to me. Listen to. You have trained security. You have me. You have Marcus. And you have the FBI actively investigating Reynolds. We're not helpless victims. We're prepared defenders. There's a difference. Sophia took a shuddering breath. Okay. I'm sending you the address and gate code for the lake house. It's isolated about a quarter-mile from the nearest neighbor. The property has motion sensors around the perimeter, security cameras, and reinforced doors. It was built by a paranoid tech executive in the 90s. Paranoia is going to work in our favor. I hope so. We'll be there in about 90 minutes. We'll be there in 2 hours. Stay alert, stay off main roads when possible. And Sophia? If you see anything suspicious, and I mean anything, even a car that seems to follow you for more than 3 turns, you call me immediately. I will. Jack, thank you for everything. Jack pocketed his phone as Marcus emerged from his house, carrying a duffel bag and wearing a jacket that concealed what Jack assumed was a holstered weapon. Sarah appeared in the doorway behind him, her face tight with worry but resolute. You bring him back safe, she called to Jack. That's the plan, ma'am. And you keep those little girls safe too. On my life. They went inside quietly, Marcus leading Jack upstairs to the guest room where Lena was sleeping. She was curled under blankets covered in stars and moons, her stuffed penguin clutched to her chest, completely unaware of the danger circling closer. Jack knelt beside the bed and gently touched her shoulder. Lena, sweetheart, wake up. She stirred, mumbling something about Jupiter's storms, then opened her eyes. Dad? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, but we need to go on a little trip. Remember Emma, the girl whose mom I'm helping? We're going to stay with her for a few days at a lake house. It'll be like a vacation. Lena sat up, rubbing her eyes, her child's intuition sensing that this wasn't really a vacation. Is it because of the bad people? It's because I want to make absolutely sure you're safe. Can you get dressed quickly? We need to leave soon. Lena nodded and climbed out of bed, moving to the duffel bag Sarah had helped her pack. Within 5 minutes, she was dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, looking far too small and vulnerable for the situation they were in. Jack carried her bag while Marcus grabbed his own gear, and they made their way to Jack's truck. Lena climbed into the back seat, already half asleep again, while Marcus took the passenger seat, his duffel at his feet. Let's move, Marcus said quietly. Jack started the engine and pulled away from the Thompson house, watching his mirrors obsessively. The streets were still empty, just pre-dawn darkness and the occasional streetlight. They drove in silence for 20 minutes, taking a deliberately circuitous route out of the suburbs and onto the highway heading north. Only when they'd put 30 miles between themselves and the city did Jack allow himself to believe they weren't being followed. Talk to me about this Reynolds character, Marcus said, his voice low so as not to wake Lena. What's his training, his capabilities, his likely next move? He's not trained. He's a businessman, a bureaucrat. But he has money and connections, which means he can hire people who are trained. The men who attacked Sophia in the parking garage were professionals, organized, methodical, knew how to hurt someone without killing them immediately. Contract muscle. Exactly. Reynolds won't come at us himself. He'll send others. The question is how many and how well equipped. Marcus was quiet for a moment, processing. We're looking at defending a lake house. Isolated location, limited escape routes, long sight lines. That's defensible if we prepare properly, but it's also a trap if someone sieges us. Which is why the FBI needs to move faster. Reeves said 72 hours. We need to survive that long, and then Reynolds is in custody, and this is over. 72 hours is a long time when you're in a defensive position with children to protect. I know. Jack's hands tightened on the steering wheel. But we don't have better options. We can't run indefinitely. Reynolds has too many resources. We can't go to the police beyond what we've already done. This is federal jurisdiction now. All we can do is fortify, defend, and wait for the cavalry. Then that's what we do. Marcus pulled his phone out, opening a tactical planning app. Tell me about the lake house, layout, entry points, defensive positions. They spent the next hour going over details. Sophia had sent floor plans and property surveys, satellite imagery showing the surrounding terrain. Marcus made notes, sketched diagrams, asked questions that revealed his military training. By the time they were 30 minutes from the lake house, they had the skeleton of a defensive plan. The sun was just beginning to lighten the eastern horizon when Jack turned off the main road onto a narrow gravel drive that wound through dense woods. The GPS showed they were getting close, but the isolation was striking. No houses visible, no lights except their own headlights cutting through the darkness. Good defensive terrain, Marcus observed. Hard to approach without being heard. Gravel driveway means we'll hear any vehicles. Dense tree cover limits sight lines for potential attackers, but also provides concealment for defenders. Unless they come in on foot from the woods, which is why we set up a perimeter, motion sensors, trip lines if we have materials. We turn this property into an early warning system. The lake house appeared around a final curve, a two-story structure with large windows facing the water, more modern than Jack had expected. Sophia's car was already parked near the front door, along with a black SUV that had to belong to her security team. Jack parked beside them and gently woke Lena. We're here, sweetheart. She blinked sleepily at the unfamiliar surroundings. Where's here? The lake house I told you about. Come on, let's get you inside. They were met at the door by Marcus Chen, Sophia's head of security. He nodded acknowledgement at Jack, then extended a hand to Marcus Thompson. Marcus Chen, Force Recon. Marcus Thompson, same, small world. Getting smaller, come in. Ms. Grant is inside with the girls. The lake house interior was open and airy, all exposed beams and polished wood floors with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. Sophia sat on a couch with Emma curled against her side, both of them looking exhausted. When Lena saw Emma, she perked up immediately. Hi, Emma. Remember me? From the other night? Emma nodded shyly. You're Mr. Jack's daughter. And you're the girl my dad helped. Want to see my penguin? His name is Captain Ice. Just like that, the girls were drawn into the easy friendship of childhood, settling onto the floor with Lena's stuffed animal and Emma's collection of books. The adults watched them for a moment, struck by the normalcy of children playing while danger circled outside. Sophia stood and crossed to Jack, her face pale and drawn. Thank you for coming, for bringing Lena. I know this isn't what you wanted. It's exactly what I wanted, Jack interrupted gently. Everyone I care about protecting in one location, with trained security and defensive advantages. This is good, Sophia. She nodded, not quite believing him, but wanting to. Chen's team swept the property. No signs of surveillance or intrusion. The security system is active, cameras covering all approaches. We should be safe here. Safe is a relative term, Marcus Thompson said, joining the conversation. But we're safer than we were. Chen, walk me through your defensive positions. The two Marines moved to a table covered in property maps and security camera feeds, immediately falling into tactical planning. Jack watched them work. grateful for their expertise, then turned back to Sophia. How are you holding up? I've been better. I've been worse. Mostly I'm tired. Sophia glanced at Emma, who was now showing Lena how to identify constellations in one of her books. I keep thinking about how we got here. A week ago, my biggest concern was a product launch. Now I'm hiding in a lake house with my daughter while federal agents investigate my company and a criminal I trusted tries to— Her voice broke slightly. Tries to hurt my child to silence me. He won't get the chance. You can't promise that. Watch me. Jack's voice carried absolute conviction. I've defended positions against insurgents with RPGs and military training. Reynolds has money and hired muscle. It's not even close to a fair fight, and we're the ones with the advantage. Sophia managed a weak smile. How do you do that? Stay calm when everything's falling apart? Training, experience, and the knowledge that panic helps no one. Jack gestured to the girls. They're counting on us to be strong, so we're strong. Simple as that. The morning passed in tense preparation. Marcus Thompson and Chen worked together to enhance the property's defenses, repositioning cameras, testing motion sensors, identifying potential weak points in the perimeter. Jack did a complete walk-around of the property, noting sight lines and approaches, mentally cataloging where an attack might come from and how they'd respond. Sophia stayed inside with the girls, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. She made breakfast, pancakes and bacon that neither she nor Jack had much appetite for, though Lena and Emma ate enthusiastically. She set up games and activities, keeping the girls occupied and their minds off the undercurrent of tension the adults couldn't quite hide. By noon, the defensive preparations were as complete as they could make them in the time available. Chen's team of 4 operators established a rotation, 2 on watch at all times, 2 resting. Marcus Thompson took up position on the second floor where he had a clear view of the driveway and surrounding woods. Jack remained mobile, checking cameras and sensors, his phone constantly in hand waiting for news from the FBI. At 1 p.m., Special Agent Reeves finally called. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "Charles Reynolds is gone." Jack's blood went cold. "Gone how?" "He never came home last night. His car is still in the Grant Tech parking garage. His phone goes straight to voicemail. His attorney claims he doesn't know where Reynolds is, but we think he helped him run." "You were supposed to be watching him." "We were. But we didn't have enough for an arrest warrant yet, just surveillance. Reynolds must have realized we were getting close and decided to disappear before we could file charges." Reeves's frustration was evident in her voice. "We've issued a bolo, be on lookout, and we're tracking his credit cards and phone records. But Miller, if Reynolds has gone dark, he's either running or he's planning something. You need to be extremely careful. We're at a secure location, multiple trained security personnel. We're as ready as we can be." "Where exactly are you? I can send local law enforcement to—" "With respect, Agent Reeves, I'm not telling you that information over an unsecured line. Reynolds has demonstrated he has reach and resources. For all I know, he's monitoring police frequencies." Reeves was silent for a moment, then sighed. "You're not wrong to be paranoid. All right, keep your phone on. If Reynolds surfaces, I'll contact you immediately. And Miller, if he comes at you, you defend yourself and those girls. Lethal force if necessary. I'll make sure the paperwork reflects justified self-defense." "Understood." Jack ended the call and immediately found Sophia, who was reading to the girls in the living room. He gestured for her to follow him to the kitchen, out of the children's earshot. "Reynolds is in the wind," he said quietly. "FBI lost him. They think he's either running or planning a last desperate move." Sophia's face went white. "Which do you think it is?" "I think a man like Reynolds doesn't run. He has too much ego, too much to lose. He's going to try one final play to either destroy the evidence against him or eliminate the witnesses who can testify. Meaning us. Meaning us." Jack glanced toward the living room where the girls were absorbed in their story. "We need to prepare for the possibility that Reynolds comes here. Today. Tonight. Soon. How would he even find us? I was so careful. No one knows about this place except—" Sophia stopped, her eyes widening with realization and horror. "Except my security team." and my assistant who coordinated their deployment, and the company that installed the security system here 10 years ago, all of whom are potentially compromised if Reynolds has been planning this. Jack felt the tactical situation shifting, pieces moving on a board he couldn't quite see. Sophia, I need you to think. Who else knows about this lake house? Anyone at Grant Tech? Reynolds might know. I mentioned it once, years ago, when we were discussing potential executive retreat locations. I said I had access to a property near the lake, but decided against suggesting it because it felt too personal. Sophia's hand went to her mouth. Oh, God. He could have made a note of it. He could have researched property records, found the ownership. She never finished the sentence. The motion sensor alarm blared through the house, a harsh electronic shriek that sent everyone into immediate action. Marcus Thompson's voice came through the security radio. Contact. 3 vehicles approaching on the access road. Multiple occupants. This is not a drill. Jack was moving before conscious thought kicked in. Chen, get the girls to the safe room. Now. Sophia, go with them. I'm not hiding while... You're not hiding. You're protecting your daughter. That's the mission. Go. Sophia ran to the living room, scooped up Emma, and grabbed Lena's hand. Come on, girls. We're playing a special game. We need to go to a safe room. Chen was already there, guiding them toward a reinforced interior room that had been designed as a storm shelter but would serve as a defensive position. The door was steel reinforced, the walls concrete, with its own ventilation system and supplies. Once sealed, it could withstand significant assault. Jack ran to join Marcus Thompson at his second-floor vantage point. Through the window, he could see 3 black SUVs coming up the gravel drive, moving fast but not recklessly. Tactical approach, not panicked flight. At least 12 hostiles, Marcus reported, his voice calm and professional. 4 per vehicle. They're armed. I can see weapons as they exit. Looks like submachine guns, maybe AR-15 platforms. This is a military-grade assault. Jack's mind raced through options, none of them good. Reynolds hired a private military contractor. He's not trying to intimidate anymore. He's trying to eliminate. The SUVs stopped 50 yards from the house, just outside optimal defensive range. Doors opened and men emerged, professional operators in tactical gear, moving with the coordinated precision of trained soldiers. They immediately established a perimeter, covering angles and approaches with practiced efficiency. Then a 4th vehicle appeared, a luxury sedan that parked behind the SUVs. Charles Reynolds emerged from the back seat. Even from a distance, Jack could see the man's face, haggard, desperate, but still carrying an arrogance that defied the reality of his situation. Reynolds walked forward until he was within shouting distance of the house. Sophia! His voice carried across the open space. I know you're in there. I know Jack Miller is with you. This doesn't have to end badly. Come out. Bring me the evidence you've gathered. Do that, and everyone walks away alive. Jack grabbed the security radio. Chen, status? Safe room sealed. All principals secured. 4 operators ready for defensive engagement. Marcus was already positioning himself at the window, his rifle, acquired from Chen's equipment, trained on the approaching hostiles. Rules of engagement? Jack thought about the girls in the safe room, about the promise he'd made to protect them, about the line between defense and murder. They fire first, we respond with overwhelming force. We don't start this, but we finish it. Copy that. Below, Reynolds was still talking. You have 60 seconds to come out, Sophia. After that, my team will enter the house and retrieve you by force. People will get hurt. Children might get hurt. That's on you if you make me do this. Jack picked up his own radio, patching into the security team's channel. All units. This is Miller. Hostile force of 12 to 15 operators attempting to breach. Defensive positions. Lethal force authorized on my command. Protect the principals at all costs. Acknowledgements came back from Chen's team, their voices steady and professional. The 60 seconds ticked by in agonizing slowness. Jack could see Reynolds checking his watch, could see the tactical team preparing for entry. They had breaching tools, flashbangs, the full arsenal of a military assault. Time's up, Reynolds called. On your conscience, Sophia. He gestured to his team. The operators moved forward in coordinated groups, 4 toward the front door, 4 around the side toward the lake-facing entrance, the remaining group providing covering fire positions. Marcus tracked the lead operator with his rifle. Jack, they're committed. We need to make a decision. Jack thought about the girls, about Lena's small hand in his, about Emma's terrified face in that parking garage, about every child who deserved to grow up in a world where men like Reynolds didn't win through violence and intimidation. Light them up, Jack said quietly. Marcus squeezed the trigger. The lead operator went down, a red bloom spreading across his tactical vest. The assault team immediately scattered, taking cover behind vehicles and trees, returning fire toward the house. Windows shattered as bullets punched through glass, tearing into walls and furniture. Chen's team opened up from their positions, controlled bursts designed to suppress and drive back the attackers. The sound was deafening, overlapping cracks of rifle fire, the deeper boom of a shotgun, the continuous rattle of automatic weapons. Jack dropped to a prone position, using the window frame for cover as he returned fire with a pistol Chen had provided. He aimed for center mass, for the tactical vest's weak points, for the discipline of controlled aggression that had been drilled into him in countless training scenarios. The firefight lasted less than 2 minutes, but felt like hours. The tactical team was good, professional, but they'd expected minimal resistance. Instead, they'd walked into a prepared defense with trained operators who knew what they were doing. 3 of Reynolds' men were down, wounded, or dead. The rest had pulled back to their vehicles, maintaining suppressive fire but no longer attempting to breach. Then Jack saw Reynolds running, not toward his operators, not toward cover, but around the side of the house toward the back entrance that faced the lake. He was going to try to breach alone, to get to Sophia directly while his team kept the defenders occupied. "Marcus, you have command," Jack called. "I'm going after Reynolds." He didn't wait for a response, just moved. Jack ran through the house, ducking below windows as bullets continued to punch through walls, his mind already 3 steps ahead. Reynolds would try the back door, find it locked and reinforced, maybe try windows. He wasn't tactical, wasn't trained, but desperation made people dangerous. Jack reached the back of the house just as Reynolds was trying to smash through a window with a piece of firewood. The older man turned, his face a mask of rage and fear, and pulled a gun from his jacket, a small revolver, shaking in his grip. "Stay back," Reynolds gasped. "Stay back or I'll shoot." "No, you won't." Jack kept moving forward, his own weapon trained on Reynolds' center mass. "You're not a killer, Charles. You're a coward who paid other people to do violence for you. You don't have it in you to pull that trigger." "I'll do whatever it takes to survive. I've worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let you and Sophia destroy everything I've built. You destroyed it yourself when you chose profit over human life." Jack was within 10 feet now, close enough to see the sweat on Reynolds' face, the tremor in his hands. 4 people died because of your decisions. Michael Chen almost died. How many more deaths were you willing to accept to protect your bonuses? They were accidents, statistical inevitabilities. You can't run a manufacturing company without some level of risk. Risk is acceptable. Criminal negligence is not. Jack took another step. "Put the gun down, Charles. The FBI knows everything. The evidence is already in federal hands. Shooting me doesn't change that. It just adds murder to your charges." Reynolds' gun wavered. For a moment, Jack thought the man might actually surrender, might accept that his desperate gambit had failed. Then Reynolds' expression hardened with the look of someone who'd decided to die rather than face consequences. He raised the revolver, aiming directly at Jack's face. Jack didn't hesitate. His training took over, assessed the threat, neutralize with minimal force necessary, protect civilians. His finger squeezed the trigger twice in rapid succession. Reynolds went down, the revolver falling from his grip, blood spreading across his expensive suit. He clutched at his chest, his breath coming in wet, labored gasps. Jack kicked the revolver away and knelt beside him, his medic training assessing the wounds, even as part of his mind reeled at what had just happened. 2 shots, both center mass, both lethal within minutes, without immediate medical intervention. "The girls," Reynolds whispered, blood flecking his lips. "Are they safe?" The question was so unexpected that Jack actually paused. "What?" "The girls, Sophia's daughter, yours, are they safe?" "Yes, they're safe." Reynolds actually smiled, weak and fading. "Good, that's good. I never wanted—" He coughed, more blood. "Never wanted children hurt. Just wanted to protect what I'd built, what I'd earned. You can't take it with you, Charles. The money, the power, the reputation. All of it stays here. Only thing that matters is the legacy you leave behind. Then I'm damned, Reynolds breathed. His eyes were losing focus, the light fading. Tell Sophia, tell her I'm sorry. For all of it. Must not. Jack wanted to feel satisfaction, wanted to feel justice. Instead, he just felt tired. I'll tell her. Charles Reynolds died at 1:47 p.m. on a beautiful autumn afternoon beside a peaceful lake, surrounded by the violence he'd set in motion and the consequences he'd refused to face. Jack stood, his legs shaking slightly from adrenaline crash, and keyed his radio. Threat neutralized. Primary hostile down. Status on remaining attackers? Chen's voice came back immediately. Remaining hostiles retreating. 3 casualties on their side, no casualties on ours. They're pulling back. Someone must have told them Reynolds is down. Let them go. Get photos of their vehicles, plates if possible. FBI will want to track them down. Copy that. Jack walked back around the house, his weapon lowered but ready. The sound of gunfire had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the lap of lake water against the shore and the ticking of cooling engines. The tactical team was gone. Their wounded loaded into the SUVs, leaving behind only shell casings and blood on the gravel. They'd accomplished their mission. Reynolds had ordered a final assault, but when their employer went down, so did their motivation to continue fighting. Marcus met Jack at the front door, his face grim. You okay? I've been better. Reynolds? Dead. Marcus nodded slowly. Good. Bastard deserved worse for what he tried to do here. They stood in silence for a moment, 2 warriors processing the violence they'd just survived, the lives they'd just taken or saved, the moral calculus that never quite balanced no matter how justified the actions. Then Jack heard it. A small voice from inside the house, cutting through the post-battle quiet. Daddy? Lena. Jack holstered his weapon and ran inside, following the sound to the safe room. Chen was there, opening the reinforced door, and as it swung wide, Jack saw his daughter standing in the doorway. Her face pale, but her eyes dry. Captain Ice the Penguin clutched tightly in her arms. Is it over? Lena asked quietly. Jack knelt so he was at her eye level and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly he worried for a moment he might hurt her. But she just wrapped her skinny arms around his neck and held on just as fiercely. It's over, he whispered into her hair. The bad people are gone. You're safe. Beside them, Sophia emerged from the safe room with Emma in her arms, the little girl's face buried in her mother's shoulder. Sophia's eyes found Jack's, asking a silent question. Jack just nodded. Reynolds was gone. The threat was eliminated. The nightmare was over. Sophia's legs seemed to give out, and she sank to the floor, still holding Emma, tears streaming down her face. Tears of relief, of trauma release, of the impossible weight of responsibility finally lifting. The next hours passed in a blur of official activity. Agent Reeves arrived with a team of federal agents, crime scene investigators, and what seemed like half the county sheriff's department. Statements were taken, evidence was collected, bodies were photographed and removed. Jack told the story 3 times. To Reeves, to her supervisor, to a state police detective who specialized in officer-involved shootings. Each time he recounted the events with clinical precision. Reynolds' assault team, the defensive engagement, Reynolds attempting to breach the house alone. The moment he raised his weapon and forced Jack to make the only choice that kept everyone else alive. Each official reached the same conclusion, justified self-defense. Reynolds had initiated lethal force. Jack had responded proportionally. The physical evidence supported Jack's account. No charges would be filed. By evening, the lake house was quiet again. The officials gone, the crime scene tape removed. Chen's security team had been relieved by fresh operators who would maintain watch for the next few days while the investigation concluded. Marcus Thompson had called his wife, assured her he was fine, and agreed to stay one more night to help Jack process everything that had happened. The girls were asleep, exhausted by trauma and adrenaline, tucked into beds in adjacent rooms where they could call out for their parents if nightmares came. Jack sat on the lake house deck, staring at water that reflected the sunset in shades of amber and rose. Sophia joined him, carrying 2 glasses of whiskey, one of which she pressed into his hand. I don't really drink, Jack said. Neither do I. But tonight seems like an exception. They sat in silence for a while, sipping whiskey that burned going down and warmed from the inside. Finally, Sophia spoke. You saved our lives, all of us. If you hadn't been here, if you hadn't trained Marcus and coordinated with Chen, if you hadn't stopped Reynolds, her voice broke. We'd be dead. Emma would be dead. We all saved each other, Jack said quietly. You had the courage to investigate. Chen and his team had the skills to defend. Marcus had the loyalty to risk his life for people he barely knew. I just did what any father would do to protect his daughter. Not any father. Most men would have walked away when I asked for help. Most men would have let the past stay buried. Sophia turned to look at him, her face lined with exhaustion, but also something else. Respect, gratitude, maybe even admiration. You're a good man, Jack Miller. Better than I deserve after what I did to you. What you did was human. You made a mistake, and then you spent 2 years regretting it. That's more integrity than most people manage. Jack set his glass down, the whiskey barely touched. The question is what happens next. Reynolds is dead, but Grant Tech still has systemic problems. The culture that allowed his corruption to thrive, the systems that prioritize profit over safety. All of that still exists. Sophia nodded slowly. I know. I've been thinking about that. I can't go back to being the CEO I was. I can't pretend this didn't happen or that everything is fine if we just fix a few policies. She took a deep breath. I'm going to rebuild Grant Tech from the ground up. New safety protocols, independent oversight, worker advocates on the board. I'm going to make it the kind of company I should have built from the beginning. That's going to cost you. Shareholders won't like it. Profit margins will drop. I don't care. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. What I don't have is the ability to look at myself in the mirror if I let one more person die because of corporate negligence. Sophia's voice was firm, decided. And I want you to help me. Jack turned to look at her fully. What? Come back to Grant Tech. Not as a mechanic, as director of safety and operations. Full authority to implement whatever changes you think are necessary. Complete autonomy, direct report to me, budget to do it right. Sophia met his eyes. I know it's asking a lot after everything. I know you have every reason to say no. But Jack, if anyone knows how to build a safety culture that actually protects workers, it's you. Jack was quiet for a long time, processing the offer, weighing it against his hard-won peace as a mechanic, his quiet life with Lena, his freedom from corporate politics. But he also thought about Michael Chen, about the 4 workers who died under Reynolds' watch, about Morrison, and the 40 people in Building C who'd been working above a ticking bomb without knowing it. I'll do it on one condition, Jack finally said. Name it. Michael Chen gets his job back, full back pay for the time he lost, promotion if he wants it, and a formal apology from the company for what happened to him. Sophia smiled. Already done. I tracked him down yesterday and called him personally. He starts next week in a supervisory position. Then I guess I'm director of safety and operations. They shook hands, sealing the agreement. 2 former adversaries turned allies by shared trauma and shared purpose. The next morning, Jack woke to find Lena and Emma in the kitchen, working together to make breakfast. Lena was teaching Emma how to crack eggs while Sophia supervised, and the sound of children's laughter filled the space where gunfire had echoed just 24 hours earlier. Marcus found Jack on the deck, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise paint the lake in colors of gold and pink. How you doing, brother? Marcus asked. Honestly, I don't know yet. Ask me in a few months when the nightmares start. They always do, but you know what helps? What? Knowing you did the right thing, knowing the people you protected got to wake up this morning because of choices you made. Marcus gestured toward the kitchen where the girls' laughter continued. Listen to that sound. That's what you fought for. That's what matters. Jack listened. The innocence of children who'd survived something they should never have experienced, who were resilient enough to find joy even in the shadow of trauma. Yeah, he said quietly. That's what matters. Agent Reeves called that afternoon with updates. Reynolds' tactical team had been identified. Private military contractors from a firm with questionable ethics and expensive rates. They were being tracked down for questioning regarding their role in the assault. Reynolds' attorney was cooperating, providing documentation of the conspiracy in exchange for immunity. The evidence against Reynolds was so overwhelming that the FBI was already preparing a public statement exonerating Sophia and Jack of any wrongdoing. "You two did good work," Reeves said. "Dangerous work, reckless work, work you should have left to federal agents, but good work nonetheless. We'll need you both for testimony once the related cases go to trial, but that won't be for months." "Understood," Jack said. "Agent Reeves, thank you for believing us, for moving as fast as you could. I just wish we'd moved faster. If we'd arrested Reynolds before he ran, none of yesterday would have happened. But we'd never know for sure if he would have escalated to violence. Now we know. Now it's documented. And now every other executive at every other company knows that this kind of corruption has consequences." Reeves was quiet for a moment. "That's an optimistic way to look at it." "I'm trying optimism for a change. See how it fits." They ended the call. Jack found Sophia in the living room reading to both girls from Emma's astronomy book. They looked peaceful, safe, the trauma of yesterday already beginning to transform into just a scary memory rather than a defining moment. "We should head home soon," Sophia said quietly. "Emma needs her own bed, her own routine. So does Lena." "Agreed. Tomorrow morning?" "Tomorrow morning." That evening, after the girls were asleep and Marcus had turned in for the night, Jack and Sophia sat on the deck one final time, watching stars emerge in a sky unpolluted by city lights. "I keep thinking about what Reynolds said," Sophia murmured. "At the end, when he was dying, he asked if the girls were safe. I remember. Do you think he meant it? Or was it just fear talking?" Jack considered the question. "I think people are complicated. Reynolds made terrible choices that killed people. But he was also human, capable of caring about something beyond himself, even if only in his final moments. Both things can be true. I don't know if I can forgive him." "You don't have to. Forgiveness is for you, not for him. Whether you forgive or not, he's gone. What matters now is what you do with Grant Tech, how you honor the people who died by making sure no one else does." Sophia nodded slowly. "I won't let them down. I promise." They sat in comfortable silence until the cold drove them inside. Two people who'd survived something that should have broken them, who'd found strength they didn't know they had, who'd learned that sometimes doing the right thing cost everything and was still worth it. The drive back to the city the next morning was quiet. Lena dozed in the back seat while Jack navigated familiar roads, each mile bringing them closer to normal life, to the routines and rhythms they'd left behind when this nightmare began. When they reached Sophia's mansion, Emma woke up and immediately hugged Lena goodbye, the two girls promising to have playdates soon, to work on school projects together, to be friends beyond the trauma that had brought them together. Sophia walked Jack to his truck, her hand briefly touching his arm. "Thank you for everything, for saving us, for believing in us, for giving me a chance to be better than I was." "You were always better than you thought," Jack said. "You just needed a reason to prove it." He drove home with Lena, who was fully awake now, asking questions about what would happen next, whether the bad people were really gone, whether Daddy was going to be okay. Jack answered honestly. Yes, the bad people were gone. Yes, Daddy would be okay. Yes, things would return to normal, though it might take time. What he didn't say was that he'd carry yesterday with him forever, that he'd see Reynolds' face in dreams, would wonder if there'd been another way, would question if the violence could have been avoided. But he'd also carry the memory of Lena safe in his arms, of Emma's laughter in the kitchen, of Sophia's promise to rebuild her company into something worth believing in. In the end, that had to be enough, because it was all they had, and sometimes all you had was everything that mattered. 3 months later, Jack stood in front of what had once been Building C, watching construction crews install new ventilation systems and replace equipment that should have been retired years ago. The building had been gutted and rebuilt from the foundation up, every system inspected and certified, every safety protocol reviewed and strengthened. It was costing Grant Tech millions of dollars, and the company's stock had taken a significant hit when the full scope of Reynolds' corruption became public. But no one had died in those 3 months. Not a single accident, not a single preventable injury, not a single worker sent home with exposure to chemicals that shouldn't have been in the facility. That was worth more than any stock price. Impressive, isn't it? Morrison appeared beside him carrying a tablet that showed the renovation schedule. The floor supervisor had been promoted to safety operations manager, one of Jack's first decisions when he'd taken over as director. We're ahead of schedule. New equipment arrives next week, and we should have full production capacity restored by end of month. And the workers? How are they adjusting to all the changes? Morrison smiled. Are you kidding? Morale's higher than I've seen in a decade. People actually feel safe coming to work. They know someone's looking out for them now, that profit isn't the only thing that matters. He paused. Jack, I've worked in manufacturing for 20 years. I've never seen a company prioritize safety like this. What you and Ms. Grant are building here, it's special. Jack accepted the compliment with a nod, though part of him still struggled with his new role. He wasn't used to having an office, to wearing business casual instead of coveralls, to sitting in meetings where his opinions actually shaped policy. But he was learning, adapting, using his platform to make changes that mattered. His phone buzzed with a text from Sophia, board meeting in 20 minutes. Need you there. Jack excused himself from Morrison and made his way to the executive building, a structure he'd once only entered to fix broken equipment. Now he had an office on the third floor with his name on the door and a view of the manufacturing campus he was working to transform. The boardroom was already filling when Jack arrived. Men and women in expensive suits, some supportive of Sophia's new direction, others openly hostile to changes that were cutting into profit margins. Jack took his seat at the table, directly to Sophia's right, a visible symbol of her commitment to safety over shareholder returns. Sophia called the meeting to order, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd survived an assassination attempt and come out stronger. Thank you all for coming. I know some of you have concerns about our recent expenditures and the impact on quarterly earnings. Jack, would you walk the board through the safety improvements we've implemented? Jack stood, pulling up a presentation on the screen behind him. For the next 15 minutes, he detailed every change: new equipment, updated protocols, mandatory safety training, independent oversight committees, worker advocacy programs. He showed accident statistics that had dropped to near zero. He showed employee satisfaction scores that had increased by 40%. He showed productivity numbers that, despite the doomsayers' predictions, had actually improved because workers who felt safe worked better. When he finished, one of the board members, a venture capitalist named Hammond, who'd been vocal in his opposition, raised his hand. Mr. Miller, these improvements are admirable, but they're also expensive. We've spent over $60 million in 3 months. Our stock is down 18%. At what point do we acknowledge that this level of investment in safety is simply not sustainable? Jack met Hammond's eyes without flinching. Mr. Hammond, Charles Reynolds' corruption and negligence resulted in at least 4 confirmed deaths and countless injuries. The lawsuits from those deaths alone would have cost the company over $100 million plus immeasurable reputational damage. The $60 million we've spent is insurance against that ever happening again. But more importantly, it's the right thing to do. The right thing doesn't always align with shareholder value. Then maybe shareholder value isn't the only metric that matters. Jack's voice was calm but firm. I'm not an executive. I don't have an MBA. But I know what it's like to watch good people die because someone chose profit over safety. I know what it's like to be punished for saving a life. And I know that Grant Tech can either be the kind of company that values human beings, or it can be the kind that values quarterly earnings reports. It can't be both. The room was silent. Hammond leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Then another board member, an older woman named Patricia Chen, who Jack had learned was Michael Chen's aunt, spoke up. I move that we continue Director Miller's safety initiatives for a minimum of 2 years with full funding and board support. All in favor? 6 hands went up immediately. After a moment's hesitation, 2 more joined them. Hammond's hand remained down, but he was outvoted. Motion carries, Sophia said, a small smile playing at her lips. Thank you, Jack. That will be all. Jack returned to his office, his hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline of confronting a room full of people who controlled billions of dollars. But he'd meant every word. Some things were worth fighting for, even when the fight was uncomfortable. His office phone rang. Jack answered to find Jennifer Park on the other end, her voice bright and energetic. She'd returned to work a month ago, this time in a newly created position as internal auditor with direct reporting authority to Sophia and the board. Her job was to ensure that what had happened under Reynolds never happened again. "Jack, you need to see this," Jennifer said. "I just finished reviewing the maintenance budgets for the satellite facilities. Everything checks out perfectly. No deferred maintenance, no redirected funds, no suspicious expenditures. It's all clean. That's what we're aiming for." "I know, but you don't understand. 6 months ago, these books were a disaster. Now they're a model of transparency and accountability. What you've built here, what Sophia's committed to, it's working. It's actually working." Jack felt something unfamiliar. Pride, maybe, or hope. "Thanks, Jennifer. Keep watching. The moment anything looks questionable, you let me know immediately." "Always." After work, Jack drove to pick up Lena from school. She'd returned to her normal routine quickly, the resilience of childhood allowing her to process trauma in ways adults couldn't quite manage. She still had nightmares occasionally, still asked questions about what had happened at the lake house, but mostly she was just Lena, curious, brilliant, obsessed with astronomy, and convinced she'd be the first person to walk on Jupiter. "Dad!" She bounded toward the truck, her backpack bouncing with each step. "Guess what? Mrs. Harrison said my Jupiter project was the best in the class. She's going to display it in the hallway for the whole school to see." "That's fantastic, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." Lena climbed into the truck, then turned to him with sudden seriousness. "Dad, can Emma come over this weekend? She wants to help me build a model of the solar system for the science fair." "I'll check with her mom, but I'm sure that'll be fine." Emma and Lena had become inseparable in the months since the lake house. They had playdates twice a week, sleepovers once a month, and a friendship that had been forged in circumstances no child should have to experience but had somehow emerged beautiful and genuine. Watching them together, Jack sometimes wondered if they truly understood how close they'd come to losing everything, or if children were blessed with the ability to find joy even in the shadow of tragedy. That evening, Jack's apartment, which he'd upgraded to a larger place in a better neighborhood, courtesy of his new salary, hosted an impromptu gathering. Marcus Thompson arrived with his family, Chen stopped by after his shift, and Sophia came with Emma and a lasagna she'd attempted to make herself. "I should warn you," Sophia said as she set the dish on Jack's kitchen counter, "I'm not much of a cook. This might be inedible." "It's the thought that counts," Jack assured her, though he made sure to have pizza delivery on speed dial just in case. The adults gathered in the living room while the girls retreated to Lena's bedroom to work on their solar system project. Marcus's daughters, Megan and Claire, joined them, and soon the apartment was filled with the sound of children's laughter and animated discussions about planetary orbits. "How are you holding up?" Marcus asked Jack, handing him a beer. "Big changes in 3 months. New job, new responsibilities. New life, basically." "Some days are better than others," Jack admitted. "I still have moments where I second-guess everything. Wonder if I should have just stayed a mechanic, kept my head down, avoided all of this." "But you didn't," Chen observed. "You saw something wrong and you fixed it. That's not something to regret." Sophia raised her glass of wine. "To fixing things, and to the people brave enough to try." They drank to that, a small group of people who'd been thrown together by circumstances and had somehow become something like family. Sarah Thompson and Sophia discovered a shared interest in contemporary art. Marcus and Chen swapped military stories. Jack just listened, content to be part of something good, something normal, something that wasn't about survival or violence or desperate last stands. Later, after the Thompsons had left and Chen had headed home, Sophia helped Jack clean up while the girls continued their project. They worked in comfortable silence, loading the dishwasher and wiping down counters with the easy rhythm of people who'd learned to trust each other completely. "I got a call from Agent Reeves today," Sophia said as she dried a plate. "The trials for Reynolds' tactical team are scheduled for next month. She wants both of us to testify." Jack had been expecting this. The legal aftermath of that day at the lake house had been complex, multiple agencies involved, overlapping jurisdictions, questions about use of force and self-defense. But ultimately, every investigation had concluded the same thing: justified actions in defense of innocent lives. "How do you feel about testifying?" Jack asked. "Nervous, angry, relieved that it's almost over." Sophia set down the plate and turned to face him. "Jack, I've been thinking about something, about what happens after the trials, after all of this is finally finished. What's that? I want to create something permanent, something that ensures what we went through, what those four workers and their families went through, never happens again. Sophia's eyes were bright with purpose. I want to establish a foundation, the Phoenix Response Center. It would train workers in safety protocols, teach executives about ethical responsibility, provide resources for whistleblowers who see corruption and don't know how to report it safely. Jack felt that familiar sensation of pieces clicking into place, of a path forward that made sense. I think that's a brilliant idea. I want you to help me run it. Not now, you're needed at Grant Tech. But eventually, when the company's safety culture is solid and sustainable, I want us to take what we've learned and teach it to others. I want to make sure no other company can do what Grant Tech did under Reynolds. You're talking about changing entire industries. I'm talking about saving lives. That's all I've ever wanted to do since the night in that parking garage when I realized how badly I'd failed. Sophia's voice cracked slightly. I can't bring back those four workers. I can't undo the pain their families suffered, but I can make sure their deaths meant something, that some good came from all the bad. Jack reached out and squeezed her shoulder, a gesture of support and understanding. Then that's what we'll do, together. Sophia smiled through tears. Together. The girls emerged from Lena's room carrying a model solar system that was lopsided and covered in glue, but created with such obvious enthusiasm that it was beautiful. Emma pointed out each planet, explaining its features with the seriousness of a NASA scientist, while Lena added dramatic details about storms and volcanoes and the terrifying beauty of space. Watching them, Jack felt something shift inside him, a releasing of tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying, a letting go of the fear that had defined the past 3 months. His daughter was safe. Sophia's daughter was safe. The immediate danger had passed, and while the world was still full of threats and challenges, in this moment they were okay. More than okay. They were healing. The trials came and went. Jack and Sophia testified about Reynolds' corruption, about the assault at the lake house, about the desperate final confrontation that had ended with Reynolds' death. The defense attorneys tried to paint them as vigilantes, as people who'd taken the law into their own hands. The prosecutors painted them as heroes who'd defended children against armed criminals. The jury sided with the prosecutors. Reynolds' tactical team was convicted on multiple charges: assault with deadly weapons, conspiracy to commit murder, illegal use of military equipment in civilian operations. They received sentences ranging from 15 to 25 years. When the verdicts were read, Jack felt no satisfaction, no sense of victory, just exhaustion and relief that it was finally, truly over. 6 months after the trials, Grant Tech held a ceremony. Sophia stood before an audience of workers, executives, journalists, and families of the 4 workers who died under Reynolds' watch. She spoke about accountability, about the failures that had led to preventable deaths, about the company's commitment to never letting profit override human life again. Then she unveiled a memorial, a simple stone monument in the center of the Grant Tech campus, engraved with 4 names: David Martinez, Sarah Johnson, Thomas Wright, and Kevin Park. Below their names, a single line: "They deserved better. We will do better." Jack stood beside Sophia as family members approached the memorial, some crying, some angry, all of them carrying grief that would never fully heal. He'd met with each family personally in the months since Reynolds' death, listening to their stories, acknowledging the company's failures, promising that their loved ones hadn't died in vain. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. After the ceremony, Michael Chen found Jack near the memorial. The man who'd almost died 2 years ago, whose life Jack had saved at the cost of his own career, extended his hand. "Thank you," Michael said simply, "for saving my life, for coming back, for making this place what it should have been all along." Jack shook his hand, feeling the weight of that moment 2 years ago, the choice that had cost him everything and somehow led him here. "I'm just glad you're okay." "More than okay. I'm alive because you broke the rules. Those 4 people on that memorial died because someone followed them." Michael glanced at the stone monument. "Rules matter, but people matter more. You taught me that." After Michael left, Sophia joined Jack in front of the memorial. They stood in silence, reading the names, carrying the weight of what had been lost and what had been saved. "Do you think they'd forgive us?" Sophia asked quietly. "The families? The workers who died?" "I think forgiveness isn't something we get to ask for," Jack said. "We just have to earn it, every single day, by doing better." "Then that's what we'll do." 1 year after the lake house, the Phoenix Response Center opened its doors. It wasn't much at first. A converted warehouse on the edge of the city, outfitted with training equipment and classrooms and a small staff of dedicated people who believed in the mission. But it was a start. Jack had transitioned from Grant Tech to the center 6 months earlier, once he was confident that the safety culture he'd built was sustainable. Morrison had been promoted to his position, and Jack had spent weeks training him, passing on everything he'd learned about balancing corporate pressures with ethical responsibility. The center's first training class consisted of 20 workers from various industries: manufacturing, construction, chemical processing. Jack and Sophia taught them about recognizing safety violations, reporting corruption, protecting themselves legally and physically when they blew the whistle on dangerous practices. On the last day of training, one of the students, a woman named Rosa, who worked in a textile factory, raised her hand. "Mr. Miller, what you did, standing up to Reynolds and exposing the corruption at Grant Tech, that took incredible courage. How do we find that kind of courage when we're just ordinary people trying to keep our jobs?" Jack thought about that question for a long moment before answering. "I'm not courageous, I'm just stubborn and maybe a little stupid. But here's what I've learned. You don't need to be a hero to do the right thing. You just need to be willing to take one step forward, even when you're scared. You take that step, and then another, and another, and eventually you look back and realize you did something that mattered. But what if taking that step cost you everything? Your job, your career, your safety? Then you decide what matters more. Your temporary comfort or someone else's life? Because that's what it comes down to. When you see something dangerous and you stay silent, you're making a choice that someone else might pay for with their life." Jack's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying there aren't real consequences. But I am saying that some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight is scary." Rosa nodded slowly, absorbing this. Around the room, other students were taking notes, their faces showing a mixture of determination and fear and hope. After class, Sophia found Jack in his office, a small space with windows overlooking the training floor. She carried 2 cups of coffee and a folder full of applications for the next training session. "We have 60 people signed up for the next class," she said, handing him the coffee. "Word's spreading. People want to learn how to protect themselves and their coworkers. Jack, I think this might actually work." "It's already working." Jack gestured to the training floor where students were practicing safety inspections on mock equipment. "Look at them. 3 weeks ago, they were scared workers who felt powerless. Now they're learning how to identify hazards, how to report violations, how to stand up for themselves. We're creating a generation of people who won't accept dangerous working conditions just because their employer tells them to." Sophia smiled. "You sound like a revolutionary." "I sound like someone who's tired of watching good people die preventable deaths." They stood at the window watching the students work. 2 people who'd been brought together by tragedy and had chosen to create something meaningful from the wreckage. The Phoenix Response Center wasn't going to change the world overnight, but it might save a few lives, and a few lives were worth everything. That evening, Jack drove to pick up Lena from Emma's house, where the girls had been working on yet another school project. Sophia's mansion was different now. The security had been scaled back to reasonable levels, the paranoia had faded, and it felt more like a home than a fortress. Emma and Lena emerged carrying a poster board covered in photos and text. Their project, Lena explained with barely contained excitement, was about heroes. Real heroes, not superheroes from movies, but ordinary people who'd done extraordinary things. "And look, Dad," Lena said, pointing to one section of the poster. "We included you." Jack's breath caught. There was a photo of him. He didn't know where they'd gotten it, alongside text that read, "Jack Miller, former Navy SEAL and safety director, who stopped bad people from hurting workers and saved lives by standing up for what was right." "Girls, this is..." Jack struggled to find words. "This is wonderful. I'm honored to be on your hero poster." You're our hero, Emma said simply. You saved my mom. You saved me. You saved lots of people. We save each other, Jack corrected gently. Your mom is just as much a hero as I am. She had the courage to investigate corruption even when it was dangerous. She chose to do the right thing even when it cost her company money. That takes real strength. Sophia appeared in the doorway, her eyes suspiciously bright. Are you making me cry in front of the children, Jack Miller? Just stating facts. The girls insisted on showing off their entire project. Heroes from history, heroes from their community, heroes who were teachers and firefighters and doctors. But the section on Jack and Sophia was the centerpiece, lovingly created with glitter and photographs and handwritten explanations of what made someone heroic. Later, after Lena had fallen asleep in the truck on the drive home, after Jack had carried her to bed and tucked her in with Captain Ice, the penguin beside her, he sat in his living room and thought about the past year, about everything they'd survived, everything they'd lost, everything they'd built from the ashes. His phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Thank you for today, for every day, for giving me a chance to be better. Jack typed back. Thank you for taking that chance, for trusting me when you had every reason not to. The response came immediately. Coffee tomorrow? I have ideas for expanding the center. Of course you do, Jack replied with a smile. Tomorrow at 8. The months continued to pass, marked by small victories and incremental progress. The Phoenix Response Center trained hundreds of workers who returned to their jobs armed with knowledge and confidence to speak up when they saw something wrong. Grant Tech's accident rate remained at near zero, becoming an industry benchmark that other companies studied and tried to emulate. Jennifer Park published an article in a business journal about transparent accounting practices that became required reading in MBA programs. Jack and Sophia became something like partners, united by shared mission and mutual respect that had been forged in the worst circumstances and tempered into something unbreakable. They weren't friends exactly, their relationship was too complex, too weighted with history, but they were allies in the truest sense, two people committed to the same cause. Lena and Emma grew closer, their friendship deepening from playdates to true sisterhood. They had sleepovers where they stayed up late talking about boys and space and their dreams for the future. They defended each other at school, collaborated on projects, and called each other every night before bed. One evening, almost exactly 1 year after the confrontation at the lake house, Jack received a call from Agent Reeves. I thought you'd want to know, she said. We just closed the last investigation related to Reynolds. Every contractor, every accomplice, every person who helped him cover up violations, they've all been identified and prosecuted. It's over, Jack, completely over. Jack felt something release in his chest, a tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying for 12 months, a hypervigilance that could finally relax. Thank you, Agent Reeves, for everything. You did the hard part. I just filed the paperwork. Reeves paused. Jack, what you and Sophia built, the safety protocols at Grant Tech, the Phoenix Response Center, the cultural shift you're creating, that's how you change systems. Not just by catching bad guys, but by making it harder for bad guys to exist in the first place. After the call, Jack walked to Lena's room. She was asleep, her astronomy posters covering the walls, her books about space exploration stacked on the nightstand. He stood in the doorway, watching her chest rise and fall with steady breaths, and allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Safety. True, deep, genuine safety. The monsters were gone. The investigations were closed. His daughter could sleep without fear, could dream about Jupiter and nebulae and distant galaxies without nightmares about gunfire and violence. They'd made it through. Somehow, impossibly, they'd survived. 2 years after the parking garage assault, the Phoenix Response Center held its first anniversary celebration. Over 300 people attended, workers who'd been trained, families of workers who'd been saved by whistleblowers who'd gone through the program, journalists who'd covered the Reynolds scandal and its aftermath. Jack stood at a podium looking out at the crowd, and for once didn't feel the familiar anxiety of public speaking. These were his people, workers and fighters, and ordinary individuals who'd chosen to do extraordinary things. 2 years ago, he began, I was a mechanic who heard a child scream for help. I didn't think about consequences or costs or personal safety. I just responded because someone needed help. That's all any of us are trying to do here. Respond when someone needs help. Whether it's stopping an assault, reporting a safety violation, or teaching someone how to protect themselves and their coworkers, we're all just responding to that same call for help. He paused, looking at Sophia, who stood at the side of the room with Emma and Lena. Someone once told me that heroes are just people who don't walk away. I don't know if that makes us heroes, but I know it makes us better than we were. And maybe that's enough. Maybe being better, helping where we can, refusing to walk away, maybe that's all anyone can ask of us. The applause was thunderous. Jack stepped away from the podium, feeling lighter than he had in years. After the celebration, after the crowds had dispersed and the center had emptied, Jack found himself alone with Sophia on the rooftop of the converted warehouse. The city spread out before them, millions of lights representing millions of lives, each one valuable, each one worth protecting. "We did it," Sophia said softly. "We actually did it. We stopped Reynolds. We changed Grant Tech. We created something that's going to save lives for years to come." "You did it," Jack corrected. "I just helped." "No, we did it together. I couldn't have done any of this without you." Sophia turned to face him. "Jack, I need to tell you something. Something I should have said 2 years ago, but was too proud and too scared to admit." "What's that?" "When I fired you, I knew it was wrong. I knew you'd saved Michael Chen's life, that you'd done exactly what any decent person would do. But I fired you anyway because I was afraid of bad publicity, afraid of looking weak, afraid of admitting that our safety protocols were inadequate. I sacrificed you to protect my image." Sophia's voice was thick with emotion. "And then, 2 years later, you saved my life. You saved my daughter. You risked everything to help me, even though I'd destroyed your career. That kind of grace, that kind of forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful for it every single day." Jack was quiet for a long moment, processing this confession, this vulnerability. "You know what I learned from all of this? People are complicated. We make mistakes. We fail. We let fear drive our decisions. But we can also choose to be better. You chose to be better, Sophia. That matters more than the mistake. I'm trying. Every day I'm trying to be the person I should have been all along. That's all any of us can do." They stood in silence, two people who'd been through hell together and had emerged scarred but stronger, broken but healing. "Jack?" Sophia's voice was tentative. "Thank you for not walking away, for being the hero the girls needed. The hero I needed." Jack smiled. "Heroes are just people who don't walk away. You taught me that." "No," Sophia said, smiling through tears. "You taught me that. I just wrote it down." 3 years after that night in the parking garage, on a crisp autumn evening when the leaves were turning gold and the air smelled of wood smoke and possibility, Jack returned home to find an envelope waiting for him. Inside was an invitation, Emma's 8th birthday party, with a handwritten note from the birthday girl herself. "Dear Mr. Jack, you have to come to my party because you and Lena are family now. Mom says families are the people who stay with you when things are hard. You stayed. That makes you family. Love, Emma. P.S. There will be cake." Jack read the note 3 times, each time feeling something shift in his chest. Grief for all they'd lost, gratitude for all they'd survived, hope for all they were building. He called Sophia. "We'll be there. Tell Emelina and I wouldn't miss it for anything." "Jack, about the note, Emma wrote that herself. I didn't tell her to call you family." "I know, that's what makes it perfect." The party was everything a child's birthday should be. Laughter and games and too much sugar and moments of pure, uncomplicated joy. Jack watched Lena and Emma blow out candles together, watched them make wishes that he hoped with his entire being would come true, watched them live the childhood they deserved. Later, as the sun was setting and parents were collecting their children, Marcus Thompson pulled Jack aside. "You look happy, brother. Really, genuinely happy. When's the last time you felt that way?" Jack thought about it. "Maybe before Afghanistan, before I got injured, before everything fell apart." "And now?" "Now I'm building something instead of surviving something. There's a difference." Marcus smiled. "Yeah, there is. I'm proud of you, Jack. For everything you've done, everything you've become." I'm just a man who heard a child scream and decided to help. No, you're a man who heard a child scream and decided to change the world. That's different. That night, after Lena was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Jack sat at his kitchen table and wrote a letter. Not to anyone specific, but to the universe, to the future, to the version of himself who'd been sitting in the same spot 3 years ago, wondering if doing the right thing had been worth the cost. He wrote about Sophia and Emma, about the Phoenix Response Center, about Grant Tech's transformation. He wrote about the workers who were alive today because of safety protocols that hadn't existed 3 years ago. He wrote about Lena's dreams of space exploration and Emma's determination to become a scientist who solved impossible problems. He wrote about redemption and second chances and the strange mathematics of justice, where sometimes losing everything was the only way to find what truly mattered. At the bottom of the letter, he wrote a single line, the same line that had been written above the Phoenix Response Center's entrance, the motto that had guided everything they'd built. Heroes are just people who don't walk away. Jack folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, a message to his past self and his future self, a reminder of what they'd survived and what they'd become. The next morning, he woke to find Lena making breakfast, badly, enthusiastically, with pancake batter on the ceiling and flour on her clothes. She was singing something about Jupiter's moons, completely unself-conscious, completely happy. Jack stood in the doorway, watching his daughter, and felt gratitude so profound it brought tears to his eyes. This moment, this ordinary, perfect, impossibly precious moment, was what he'd fought for. This was what had been worth every cost, every sacrifice, every terrifying choice. His phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. New class starts today at the center. 25 students. Ready to change more lives? Always, Jack texted back. That's what we do. He helped Lena finish breakfast, drove her to school, and headed to the Phoenix Response Center, where 25 workers waited to learn how to protect themselves and their coworkers. Each one of them represented potential lives saved, future tragedies prevented, families that wouldn't have to grieve preventable deaths. Sophia met him at the entrance, carrying coffee and lesson plans, and the determined expression of someone who'd found her purpose. Together, they walked into the center, into the work that defined them, into the mission that had brought them together and transformed them both. Heroes are just people who don't walk away. They hadn't walked away. They'd stayed. They'd fought. They'd built something beautiful from something broken. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The story that had begun with a child's scream in a parking garage had become a story of redemption, of courage, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things because they refused to accept that the world had to be the way it was. Jack Miller, former Navy SEAL, former mechanic, former outcast, had become exactly what he'd always been: a protector, a defender, a man who heard calls for help and responded. Sophia Grant, former CEO who'd prioritized profit over people, had become something better, a leader who understood that success meant nothing if it was built on suffering, that wealth meant nothing if it cost human lives. Together, they'd created a legacy that would outlive them both, that would protect people they'd never meet, that would prove that integrity and courage and refusing to walk away could actually change the world. Years would pass. Lena would grow up to become an aerospace engineer, designing systems that kept astronauts safe in the hostile environment of space. Emma would become a corporate ethics consultant, teaching the next generation of executives that profit and morality weren't mutually exclusive. The Phoenix Response Center would expand to 12 locations across the country, training thousands of workers, preventing countless accidents, saving lives that would never know they'd been saved. Grant Tech would become the gold standard for safety culture, the company other corporations studied when they wanted to do better. And Jack Miller would continue to wake up every morning, grateful for the daughter sleeping down the hall, for the work that gave his life meaning, for the second chance he'd been given to be the man he'd always wanted to be. But all of that was still in the future. In this moment, on this ordinary Tuesday morning, 3 years after everything changed, Jack Miller stood in the Phoenix Response Center's training room, looked at 25 workers who'd come to learn how to save lives, and said the words that had become his creed, his purpose, his truth. Heroes are just people who don't walk away. So today, we're all going to be heroes. Let's get started. And they did. Because that's what heroes do. They don't walk away. They stay. They fight, they build. They make the world better, one choice at a time, one life at a time, one moment at a time. And sometimes that's enough to change everything.